All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bearded Gear podcast. This is episode number 5 already, which is crazy that I'm already 5 deep on these. I've actually just the past couple of days been thinking as well that I may step these up to twice a week. So this may be the first episode that goes live on a different day. We'll see, but I'm thinking this will go live end of this week instead of next Wednesday. Anyways, today I am joined by my good buddy Wes from The Pocket Perspective. Wes has the YouTube channel, The Pocket Perspective, as well as the Instagram to go along with it. And we just met a couple of months ago, I think basically from the Millie PM2 Para 3 Club on Facebook. And we've kind of struck up a bit of a friendship. We've talked on the phone a few times. Wes has helped me and a buddy out with the project. We did a live unboxing together on my YouTube channel. So we've got a little bit of rapport built up at this point. But thanks for coming in, Wes. How you doing, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Doing good. So ready to dive into some knife subjects and wherever else we want to wander off to. So
who knows, knowing me. So I think a good kind of snapshot first for listeners who aren't as aware of you as they are of me, because this is my show and it's episode number 5. Can you let the people know a little bit about like what your channel is about, if you have a focus or kind of where you come at EDC from in terms of your content creation?
Sure. Yeah. So the YouTube channel is called The Pocket Perspective, and right now it's mostly focused on gear reviews, knives and flashlights. There's a few other things sprinkled in there, but I've got such a backlog of both of those things just stacked up that I'm really trying to plow through those. And then I may start adding in some other things too. I've done a few watches and just wallets, things like just, different typical EDC stuff. I kind of come at things from a very analytical and specs driven manner, and but also try to weave in, my experiences of it and just my experiences being in the EDC and the knife industry, for several years, and what I find, interesting and compelling and what I don't. And I'm an extremely practical person. So I think that's the way I come at things is, if it doesn't work, it doesn't really matter what it looks like to me. So that's kind of a little bit about the channel. We may end up taking it in different directions, still in the same niche industry or sub industry, whatever this community is called. So
right.
I would like to eventually get into some discussions about different topics, the industry, and but I'm kind of saving some of those ideas until I'll start building up a bit of a following. So right now I'm just really, processing a lot of reviews to get my hands on a lot of different things and form different opinions, and kind of you just get my feet wet in the whole YouTube world now, which I think I'm starting to get there now. I've got like 50 some odd videos. And so I've got in the kind of rhythm of, the creation and got the YouTube thing kind of figured out a little bit. But yeah, that's a little bit about the channel and kind of what I focus on. So
I love it. And you're uploading a couple of videos a week at this point, right?
Yeah. So I'm trying to be very consistent on the content and the upload schedule. So it's Monday, Friday schedule, and typically record like on the weekend and then, edit at night and then, drop them on Monday and Friday. And that's kind of where it is now. I may pick up the schedule, just depends, but probably not. I mean, that seems to be about manageable with my day job, and
yeah,
just the amount of editing and time that I put into the videos. It takes me a little while to make it through it. So.
for sure. And that's already a decent pace. I mean, a lot of channels that I follow and have followed for a long time, it seems like you're lucky if you get one a week, or sometimes it's one a month. And I think if you establish kind of a rhythm and a consistent schedule, then I see it as important, because as a viewer, then I know like every couple of days there's a video from Wes and I can watch it. And I feel like even though I didn't know that it was Monday and Friday, because I've never really analyzed it, I just know when it feels like it's about time for another Pocket Perspective video, because it's like systematic. And at this point, I'm used to it. I've been following you long enough, and I just know when it's going to show up.
I've trained you. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like people who subscribe to me are probably mad with how many videos I'm shoving down their throats every day. But
No, I love it. There's always one, on my feed, and I can, I always watch something. So I may change up the schedule a little bit now that I'm starting to see some analytics, right? I mean, you really can't look at analytics of 10 videos. And if you don't have enough followers, like it just really doesn't, the data's not rich enough for you to like do anything with. And so I'm probably going to start looking at, when my viewers are most online and try to align my schedule a little bit more to that if possible. So I like looking at the data, and it's like I said, it's just now getting rich enough where I can possibly start making decisions, based on it.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I like what you said too at the very beginning about how you do a lot of knives, but also a lot of flashlights. And one thing that I like about even just the way you've named your channel is that you haven't made it like knives specific, because that's something that was important to me when I set out with my channel. Is if down the line right now it's like, I don't know, 20-1 knife videos to anything else. But if I get to a point where I like kind of change that ratio to a bit, bearded gear doesn't just mean knives. And so I like the idea of being able to, since I enjoy being outdoors so much, like that outdoor gear would be fun for me to review, just backpacks and bushcrafting stuff and fire starting materials and camping things. And like, I would love to do that. So I like that you've kind of left the door open, and you've probably already found a little bit of a better balance compared to me at weaving in stuff that isn't just knives, which I think is smart.
Yeah, I'm trying. I've got like a whole stack of flashlights that I've been rotating, and like, but I had a bunch of loaner knives, and you know how it is. Like you just don't, like you feel like you have to do those first. You just don't feel right like letting those sit on the shelves for too long. And so now I've got all my loaners back in, and I'm going to start rotating through the rest of my gear and all of the flashlights that I've accumulated, and try to push through those, and then see where it goes next. So
yeah, I think it's interesting too, looking at the type of information you give about the gear that you review. I think you're really well equipped to handle like a variety of subjects. Because for me, anytime that I've tried reviewing a flashlight, it's like I can see on the box how many lumens it says it has, but like beyond that, and like cycling through the modes, I'm so not in my in my area of expertise when I try to tackle subjects like those. Or I did these pen reviews recently for these refined pens, which I really like. They're great pens, but it's like I can talk about knives pretty in depth for a long time and not feel like I'm losing any kind of like comfort zone, right? But when it comes to other items, I just don't have like I would say the brain capacity, but really like the patience to take the time to learn all the minutia of the different types of drivers and batteries and all this stuff that goes with flashlights, or the different types of ink that these pens will take. To me, it's just like, I don't care as much about those things, but I can tell from watching the few videos you've done that aren't just knives that you're like depth of knowledge on those subjects, and the way you retain information and put it back out for the viewer is impressive to me. So I like that you're so methodical and that you have that approach to it, because it makes those other videos also valuable, whereas mine are probably like, I need to work on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm definitely not an expert, at all things, and especially not flashlights. I mean, I have a lot of flashlights, and I've done a lot of different things with them. But if you look at some of the top end people who do crazy stuff with flashlights, with their beam shots, and like, that's one thing where I'm really lacking is the beam shots, just because it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, it is a difficult thing to set your camera up and do beam shots outside and like have a good spot to do it
and capture it and have it look realistic. Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I'm lacking, in that I eventually want to get set up and to have like a standard too. Like you need to have a standard where you do beam shots where every single thing looks the same, right? So that people can compare beam shots and things like that. So most of my stuff is, it's been the tabletop on the flashlights and testing the lumens. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of got to go with what I say on whether, it throws or it's floody or whatever. But Yeah, so I do really enjoy flashlights. I've always had a thing for those as well, and I like pins a lot, but I am terrible at keeping up with them. I mean, just terrible. So uh, I have a hard time buying new ones after I lose an expensive one.
Gotcha. See, I've yet to lose an expensive one, which is why I still kind of enjoy them, I think. But I've
Yeah.
lost a lot of cheap pens in my life, and I always, if I ever carry a nice one, I'm always much more cognizant of where it is. I feel like that's kind of been my hack for it. But
Yeah, and I've tried. It's usually like a clothes change. That's like, and then it just disappears. Is it either stuck in the laundry basket, back there with the monsters or wherever, then the bottom of it that never gets emptied, or like it's somewhere, I still have it.
They exist. They didn't disappear, but you have no idea where. That's fair.
Yeah.
So I like you alluded to with flashlights specifically, but I think in a broader sense, the importance of having kind of a structure so that you can compare things against one another over a period of time. And would you say, I would say, looking at your channel, but would you say you found a pretty good like system for the way that you review knives or gear in general? Do you have like a step-by-step process that you've built out for yourself, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, so definitely for knives, I think it continually changes, right? I mean, I tweak it, but I have, a kind of a standard process about how I, first, take it out of the box and, handle it and look at it, and, then how long I'm going to carry it. And then when I do the review, I have a, systematic outline, and I try to cover the exact same thing for every single one. Sometimes it's like, it's hard not to weave it's hard not to weave topics together, right? When you're talking like about design versus, build quality, sometimes those things intermingle a little bit or whatever. And so it's hard to sometimes not go there, in that part of the video, but I'm trying to really, keep it nice and crisp, clean. That's what I like. But
For sure. Yeah, I've found like I try to do in my full reviews at least, and usually my first impressions as well. I'll talk about like kind of my typical 4 things of like ergos, carry, cutting performance, and action. And I do them in different orders like every time. There's no like I have to go in a certain progression, but I try to talk about those talking points. And I think for me, it's almost like it just makes sure that I don't miss anything because I'm prone to rambling. And it's really easy for me to get off in the weeds and start talking about things that are much less important probably to the viewer. Don't get me wrong, I still say a lot of those things and I kind of put it at the beginning or the end, but like the mid section of my review, I try to keep very like ergos, carry, cutting, action, and go through those things. But you're right, a lot of the time, like if I'm talking about cutting performance, it's really hard to not like, and the ergos are perfect for this. Like the ergos have a lot to do with cutting performance, and like those things interweave a lot. So yeah, it can be hard to stay focused, especially when you're talking about like just like the more interesting or more unique pieces of gear, stuff with different lock types than people are used to try to describe that.
Right? If it's something you really like then it's like you just like it's the snowballs, So
yep. Your excitement takes over, and then you just get
you lose track of where you're supposed to be. Yeah. But
yeah.
Sometimes those are the best ones too. I mean, I'm kind of like you. Like I have a hard time keeping it in, my targeted time frame, and sometimes it seems like they get longer and longer. And that's something that I'm still looking at data, right, on what's the optimal review time, right? I look at how long people watch my videos, but sometimes that's not indicative of how long something should actually be. And I know a lot of people don't watch videos to the end, and they get the information they want, or they scrub through, and that's another reason why I like to chapterize things as well, so people can go through there and see those things that they just want to get to. So
Yeah, I've never tried that on my YouTube videos where like you can see on the like progression of how time is moving at the bottom, the bar,
Yeah.
and yours literally has like topics that are segmented. And I always watch your videos all the way through. You're one of the channels that like, A, I'm friends with you, and B, I like your take. And so I've never used them, but I've thought it's really interesting that you do that because I'm so the opposite of you in certain ways, but I think we're similar in others. But
Yeah.
like if I'm filming a video, there's no part of my mind that's like, how long should I make this, or how short should I try to keep it, or like I just kind of let things be what they're going to be. And
No, I like it. It's very organic. So it
yeah, I
feels
mean, I can be
real.
overly controlling in other ways. Like there's aspects of the type of content that I make that I'm very like, I haven't missed a day of posting to YouTube or Instagram since I started my channel. In fact, most days I post more than once on YouTube. And like, to me, there's a certain amount of control where like I'm really on top of that type of thing. But when it comes to the content itself, I work best, I think, when I just let it be what it's going to be and let it end up where it's going to end up. And sometimes that probably gets a little bit muddy along the way. In some videos, I'm sure I say the same thing 3 times because it keeps popping into my mind. But other times I get to points that I wouldn't if I kept myself more structured. And so I just kind of know that about myself, I guess, at this point. But
Yeah, and it's also like a fine line between providing information and entertainment too, right? I
Mhm.
mean, like I will go watch reviews or review channels like just to relax, and
Sure.
I guess that's entertainment, right? And so sometimes it's not necessarily about the information. Like I've got just a broad base of people I subscribe to, right? Anything from like weird opal cutting to machining and just all sorts of weird stuff that is like so for some reason it just I like watching it.
Yeah.
So some people may just like watching reviews. So
I'd be willing to bet too that like if I really try to analyze how I learn in a video format, I think oftentimes I actually retain information better when it's less structured and when it seems more organic because I try to like engage with people and really hear what they're saying and understand like intent. And so I don't do as well with like checklist type information a lot of the time. And so maybe that's me just kind of expressing the way that I want to take information in because I can listen to a multiple hour long podcast and feel like I learned way more from like hearing a whole long form unstructured conversation than if I watched like a very structured lecture for a half hour, but there's actually probably more information in the lecture. It's just presented so differently than I am like built to take it in. So I think obviously you have to respect that other people they would never want to sit through that 3 hour long podcast and they want to just get the information out and that's the way they take it. So I don't know. I think it's fair to just make content the way it feels natural to you. And I think that also makes it more sustainable, at least for me. I would have burnt out a long time ago at the rate that I'm going if I didn't feel comfortable or didn't like what I'm doing by making content.
yeah, for sure. I mean, daily uploads, that's a lot of work. And I mean, you look at like the top end, people, vloggers who do daily uploads, and they're all leveraging editors, and they upload their videos, and people in the other side of the world who are up, edit their videos at night, and then when they wake up, they're ready for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they even upload for them, right? They even upload it after they're done, and then
Right.
they're ready to go live, and so they're just creating content, and that's it. And so they don't have to worry about it. So, with you, doing it all is it's a lot of overhead.
Yeah. My trick is that I just don't edit. I just don't cut things out. Like I just right before we started got a comment on the I put up my Ace Riv giant mouse full review and
Yeah.
there's a spot in there where I'm talking about the action and I go to use the flipper tab and I slide off of it 4 times in a row. Not because the detent is wrong on that knife or because like anything is wrong with it structurally. It's because I was pressing weird on the lock bar like an idiot, like trying to do it for the camera where it can see and like just
Naturally, yeah. Yeah.
And I could easily have like taken the time to go in and cut that tidbit out. But then part of me lazily is like, just leave it in. And there's another part of me that does think there's some value over time to letting people see that like you're not just cutting things out because
That's
they
real.
happen. Like,
That's
yeah.
real.
Because then if things do go right, then they're not assuming I took a bunch of takes to get there, which I'm not like a multiple takes kind of guy. I'm just like, see what happens, and it saves me a ton of time because most of my editing is just clipping off the spot where I'm like turning the camera on and sitting down or whatever. And then the end, sometimes I'll clip off. Usually I even just leave it to where I reach and turn off the camera. And then if I have B-roll, I'll put it in a couple of spots where I think it makes sense, but I'm not doing anything to audio other than just making sure that the levels are right. And like, it's laziness, sure, but it also allows me to get 2 videos up a day consistently for months at a time, which is like, that's not lazy,
Yeah, it's sustainable is what it is. So
Yeah, it's a different ratio of working hard because some people like to put up a video a week, they put as much time into that one video oftentimes as I did in editing my 14 videos that went live that week, which is like, it's just some people look at it as a different type of artistic expression or whatever it may be. And I'm sure watching your videos, they take at least a few hours, right, to get one mashed up.
Yeah, so it's like for one video, the record time is usually about an average of 45 to 50 minutes. Sometimes I have to do retakes or whatever for a piece, or I just feel like I missed something there, and so I'll just recut, like a 2 or 3 minute section, and then the editing is I've got it pretty dialed now. Since I'm kind of doing the same thing, I kind of know how to move things around, and I'm using dual cameras, right? So there's a little more to like, shifting things around a little bit, but it's usually about an hour and 20 minutes or so of editing. And so I basically have 2 hours or approximately just over 2 hours per video. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm averaging.
That's impressive.
For record and edit. Sometimes it's a little bit more, depending on the style of video or how bad I mess it up. But I'm getting like, I'm trying to figure out natural transitions, and the dual cameras helps a lot because I like to use it for changing subjects, right? And it's like you cut to the other feed, and it also allows me to like retake from there, and it just looks good, right? So like I address the audience, about the new section or topic or whatever, for 1 minute or something, and then I cut down to the table, and whatever I'm doing in the table, if I mess it up, then I don't have, it's not a big deal, right? It's just a natural transition. I can just cut that piece out, but yeah. So those things, and the way that I'm working and moving my hands, like what I'm doing in Premiere or whatever. But moving things around, I've got a pretty like, I don't know how everyone else does it in Premiere, but since I'm doing dual tracks, I've got it where basically the way I clip is one track is turned off. And so I've got like three video tracks, and then the 2 are turned on, and then the one above it is turned off. And so basically what I do is, when I want to show my front facing camera, I drag the video up, right? And then to the point where I want to show the other camera, and then I cut, and then I just drag it back down to the one that's turned on, and then I let it play, right? And then I clip it, and then just drag the track back up. And so there's multiple ways to do it, but that seems most efficient for me.
Yeah, it seems systematic, which is, I'm sure, cuts down on the time.
Yeah.
If I would have guessed too, I probably would have guessed that you were spending a lot more time than like with filming and editing. That's 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 or 15 minutes to get a video done, which then of course you have to like upload it to YouTube, and you have to set up all the stuff.
I mean, that sometimes that's 20, 25 minutes worth of dealing with the upload, and like, I like to like to put the specs in the description now and some other things like that. And so sometimes I got to go fetch that and copy paste it, and then I also have to pull the time for the chapters, right? So I'll have to watch the video and then scrub through it and figure out the time or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Like for me, so a lot of the time I'll shoot 4, 5, 6 videos in a day. And for me, that's only like 3 days worth of content, right? If I get 6, that's like, it just gets me ahead a little bit at a time. But those days when I shoot a whole bunch of videos, then I get home, if I'm shooting out or if I shoot at home, then I have to sit down with my laptop and then I have to trim those all 6 videos. If there's anything that happened in the middle of it, like a helicopter flew over and I know it ruined my audio and I had to wait for it to go by or something, then like I'll have made a mental note that I need to cut that out of that video. But then one of the biggest time things for me is then taking all 6 of those videos or however many it is, and then I have to export it out of iMovie, and then I have to upload it into YouTube. And going into YouTube, processing a 4K video can sometimes take quite a while. If you've got a 20, 30-minute 4K video, it's like not that quick. So a lot of the time I'll literally just be like, I'll have finished editing, which is fairly fast, and then I'll just be on the couch with like 2 movies in a row on, staying up super late, making sure they all get processed in, because then I can do all my back end on them and get them ready to go live. But that's honestly for me like one of the most time consuming parts. And I could walk away. It's not like I'm sitting there doing something the whole time. I just turn on caffeine on my computer so it doesn't go to sleep and let it run. But I also want to make sure if it gets interrupted that I'm there, and like it's a whole process.
Yep. Yeah, it is. There's a lot to it, and developing, a pipeline, right, that you can follow every single time seems to help me anyway. I should probably have this written down in a checklist, like I have a hard time not just doing things like sometimes if I like to just do things off my brain, right? Like having notes and things like that. I will do an outline for my stuff, but like remembering stuff, I would much like I don't hardly ever write anything down. I just like to remember. So
yeah, I'm not a big note taker personally. Every now and then I'll sit down when I know I've got a lot of like gear in, whether it's stuff I bought or it's loaners or whatnot, and I'll make sure I write down a list of everything I need to get reviewed. But every time that I do that, I end up like losing the list. It just sometimes helps me to like take the time to go through it. But even in school, I was like, I never showed my work on math, regardless of whether, I couldn't if I got the right answer, I did not understand why it was a requirement for me to write down how I got there, because right is right and wrong is wrong, right? Like the method by which you arrived there, to me, logically, is completely irrelevant. As long as you're consistently right and demonstrably you can prove you're getting there every time, then it doesn't matter whether it's in your head or you're writing it down. And so for me, I just like, I struggle with writing things down because I feel like I should. I rarely feel like I should, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just like, it's
exactly.
My
I think we're from the same point. Yeah. And I like, it was an issue for me too, like in math. Like I, had several discussions with my math teachers about this, like philosophical discussions on showing your work,
Right.
And I lost the battle, especially, when I went to college and like, had to go through calculus and everything else. So like you basically, you end up, I see why they want you to do it, because when you get to those higher order classes, like it's important to do things in a proper order so that you can figure out what you did right or did wrong. And so it's like developing habits. And so I get it now, but a lot of those other classes, like you just like, I could look at something and solve half the problem, write down half a note, and then solve the other half, and then boom, write the answer down. And they're like, that's not going to work.
Right. Yeah. See, I was pretty aware even in high school that like I wasn't intent on going to college, and I didn't. And so I've never even taken any calculus course. I think the highest level math that I took in high school was like algebra 2, Like I like did not even care because I knew for me that I wasn't pursuing anything that would have any relevance with. And then if I did later on in life decide to pursue something, then it would be more meaningful for me to learn it when the information felt necessary. So just for like my personality type in school, I always got decent grades. I tested really well, but I was just talking to Nick Rogers from Niche Designs about this on our hike we did last weekend. In sixth grade, I realized that I thought homework was wrong. Like I came to this realization that if I was at school for 8 hours and they had me there captive for 8 hours to teach me the things I was supposed to learn and to test me and all these things, then I disagreed with the thought process of like, now you send me home with more work to do. Because I also knew that while I was at school, a lot of that time I was waiting for other kids who weren't done yet. And like there was just random like recess. And like, if we're really there to learn all we can, then like, why am I getting sent home with more? Right. And so in sixth grade, I stopped doing homework and never again outside of school would I do homework. Sometimes if I was at school and I had free time, I'd do the homework from that night if it was already handed out or whatever. But like all through high school, middle school, it didn't matter. I just would not do it. And that's, it's probably not a very good example. I don't want my daughter to live that way, but I just go against the grain a little bit.
We're coming from the same place for sure. I was the same way. I was a non-traditional college student as well, so I never planned to go to college in high school, and I didn't go to college until I was 25. Already had a family and full-time job and everything, so
yeah,
I tried to encourage my kids, like don't do it that way.
So when would you say, just purely curiosity's sake, when you did go to college when you're 25? I'd imagine it was for something that then you were really set on intent about doing, right? Would you say you had an easier time with the actual learning aspect of going to school?
Sure. I mean, I cleaned up when I was there. I mean, like sitting in the front of the class, right, trying to absorb everything I could,
because it wasn't school for the sake of school. You weren't 18 exactly. And had just finished high school, and now it's like, oh, college is what's next, so I'll keep doing it. I have tremendous respect for people who seek higher education, whether it's formally through college or otherwise, when it's because they actually want to learn it and they can become a master at that craft. That's a great thing to me. What I am resistant to is the idea that like you just do school because everyone does school. I don't agree with being part of the herd for no reason,
Yeah, it's a big struggle for sure. And, that's, I think we have similar views, it's too much for the kids. Right. So like we're not super hard on our kids about school, try your best. And, we're not going to get mad at you if you did your best and you didn't get the best grades. Like it's it's an interesting topic. Like, the teachers there are just regular people too, just like doctors and everyone else around the world, it's they're there to try to learn as much as they can. And, you learn a lot more in life. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So I have an interesting question for you, just because we're kind of down in these weeds now. I don't know if you've ever taken this, but have you heard of the Enneagram test? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Have you taken it before?
Yeah. I've taken a couple of them. I'm not sure what that one, the different categories are on that one.
So that one's numeric, and I'd just be curious after you and I kind of relating on this, what number you would be. I'm a 5, and I'm not usually into these types of like test things. I think the Myers-Briggs one can be pretty good as well, where you like get the letters.
I'm an INFJ on that one. Yeah.
So when I was like 18, 19, I was an ENFJ, and now I'm an INTP. I like completely reversed. But the Enneagram one I find specifically interesting in the way the data flows out. So if you're able to look up what result you got or afterwards take it or whatever, I'd be just curious to know what you are.
Yeah, no, my wife had me do this. And so Or I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like getting down into these topics, oftentimes it starts to sound very like kind of like astrology to me, which I reject completely. I'm not a fan of that type of like mysticism that seems to run parallel to this kind of thing. But the legit in-depth like psychological personality tests, I think can be pretty enlightening and just interesting, if nothing else, to kind of see what people are. And if you can learn a little bit more about the way someone else ticks, then it can help you to navigate them.
I think I was a 5.
That's what I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So what's funny is 5s apparently are one of the like most rare numbers just in terms of data of how many people shake out as being a 5. It's like relatively rare. Also, like in TV shows and movies, there's hardly any 5s because they're really hard to cast, hard to portray, and like less relatable. But I've found just in the last like few weeks, I've talked to a couple of friends about this, and in like the knife community, some of the group chats that I'm in, some of the people that I'm closest with, in fact, most of them have ended up all being 5s, which I just find interesting. So like you are MB, who I just had on the Chris Reeve episode number 4, he's a 5. Nick, who I just went hiking with, he's a 5. Like all these knife guys that I have these like fun intellectual conversations with apparently are wired similarly to me.
This is an interesting topic, and like just the way that social media and not just social media, just the internet and the way that you can form these groups of people across the world now. I think that you can like start seeing these personality traits, and I think it's very interesting, how much you align with other things, not just in a specific hobby, right? Just like what we're talking about here. And so it's like we're all cut from the same cloth type of deal.
We've like self-selected into this interesting.
That's what's happened. Yeah. And it'd be very interesting, if looking at all of that data, how they can start, really refining the way people are, right? Or putting a map around how people are, right? I think they'll be able to map people out a lot easier looking at all of this data eventually. So even I would be very interested, to do like a color test, people's favorite color and things like that, and see if people have similar. And some of it may be a little bit misleading because, because we all, a lot of people like this similar type of, muted tactical matte colors, right? Because that's just what's like in style. And so would people pick that because that's, what they're like, did they get led to that, or is that really their favorite color? Right. But so anyway,
I'd be very curious to see if there was some kind of like study across the knife community where you could see how these people rank in terms of like personality traits. But it is interesting too, because even though a lot of the people that I find I have consistent conversations with, I'm finding like we share a number or something like this. There is also a lot more variety, I think, in the knife community and the EDC community than people realize. And sometimes when I tackle certain subjects like that Chris Reeve episode, I found there are a lot of silent people who have come to similar conclusions and similar thoughts, and rarely hear them verbalized. So I got a lot of like one-on-one messages of a lot of people relating to that podcast, which I thought was really cool. But I think there's a certain kind of norm of like what the conversation is in the knife community and who's having it. And so it's interesting to me to like one by one find these people who see it differently. And I don't know, like even my buddy Nick, who I went hiking with, he was talking a little bit about, and I'll have him on the podcast soon, like his personality type he feels is pretty different from a lot of the people you see in the knife community. And I was like, maybe the ones you see in the knife community, but I'd be willing to bet there's just as many, if not more, people who would relate to you more than the people who they're able to watch right now. Because yeah, there's just like a certain energy and certain kind of mold, I think, of the voices that you hear. But I don't know, there seems to be
I completely agree.
variety.
You know, like that. I think a lot of people, there's not a lot of these outspoken people that are fives, right? And so there's probably a lot more of them out there in the community than, you know, the outspoken people who are, you know, posting left, right, you know, on Facebook or Instagram, you know. And so some of those just may be more extroverted, right, than others. Or so yeah, it's a very interesting thing. You know, like I've always been like I'm completely fine being by myself. You know, I can, you know, I can entertain myself all day long. So
yeah, I relate to
usually
that.
with work, right? Usually I'm doing something, so I'm like I don't stop moving. I always have to be making or doing or working, or I just don't feel comfortable sitting around. So
yeah, see, my ideal, like if I have a day just to myself, there's nothing that I need to get done. I just have like a day for me, right? My favorite things to do are almost all solitary. And it's by no means that I don't love my loved ones and want to spend time with them as well. But like the things that recharge me are like getting out on a really difficult hike by myself to a place that's like totally secluded and I feel like truly alone. That feels like the most peaceful to me. And then on the other side of that, it's like I also have a habit of sometimes like editing my videos late at night, staying up super late and being the only one awake for like 6 hours and like just being that like that seclusion. I feel my thought processes become the most clear and like I kind of live in my head a lot of the time. But at the same time, there is a part of me that loves what happens when I do engage with people. And even though it can be a little bit like taxing instead of rejuvenating, like extroverted people feel recharged when they see people. I'm the opposite. It takes some out of me, but I love what comes out of it too. Like now having the podcast, having these long form conversations, which take energy. Like after 3 or 4 hours of talking to a person and mentally, like, I don't know if you want to call it sparring with them or whatnot, like that's draining, but it also feels really rewarding too. So like I've learned partially, I think, through working in sales for a long time as well, like how to turn on the extroversion when I need to get the result I need, I guess. But my weird monkey brain is still working on figuring that one out.
Yeah, it's I completely agree. You know, like you know, introverts you know, are really good one-on-one. You know, they have a lot to say when you get them in a room by themselves. They just don't like being around a bunch of people and like talking about nothing, right?
Yeah, and competing to be heard about meaningless things. It's such a waste of time.
Like it's it does nothing for me. So
yeah, I feel
but
that.
my wife is the opposite. She's a huge extrovert, right? And she loves being around tons of people and traveling and going places. And so she's very lively and keeps me on my feet, she keeps me centered. So
yeah, makes sense. I feel that. My wife in a lot of ways is the opposite of me. I think specifically with like the introversion extroversion ratio, we're actually pretty similar. We're like, well, she doesn't like being actually truly alone. She likes being with just me and my daughter. Like when it's just the three of us, she's happy. Or if it's like just her and her sister, she's really happy. But she doesn't want to like go for a whole day. Like I want to go disappear in the mountains. There's nothing that she seems to want to do like that. But she also, if she has to like go to an event and like see a bunch of people in a social circle, like that's taxing on her. And at the end of the day, she's really tired from that, not recharged from it. So I don't know. It's interesting too how like within the same family or the same like small group, you can have such variance. Like my siblings and I are all so different on our levels of each of those traits. And so it's weird how that forms and kind of shakes out into a person as they become an adult, like how they'll actually be socially. And I don't know, it's an interesting kind of science to me, I guess. I should probably dig more into that.
Yeah. I mean, if if I had more, you know, unlimited time, right, to do studying things, I would definitely go back to college and do some psychology or study psychology more, right? And the way people's thought, like I'm very intrigued on thought processes and how people work, right?
For sure.
So
What makes
I
people
mean,
tick?
we're just like I love like machines and like things, right? And
Mhm.
we're just another thing, right? And we work a certain way, and it's very mysterious, and so very interested on what drives us and the just I mean we're like these phenomenal biological machines. So
Right. Interesting. Well, we've gone way off into the weeds, and we're pretty far from knives now. So
all right,
let's
yeah.
let's change gears a little bit in case we're losing everybody. Um, what would you say that you've reviewed recently, or that you're in the process of reviewing, has like surprised you? Is there anything that's been kind of shocking to you?
Um, not I wouldn't say anything shocking. Uh, I'm still pretty grounded in my tastes, right?
Mhm.
Which are very clean lines and um, minimal. I would say more refined. Like I don't like art knives, and so I'm still not never very almost always when I look at a knife. Um, I'm never very shocked if I'm going to like it or not, or change my mind.
Hmm.
The only knife lately is the TRM Atom.
Hmm.
I didn't want to like it at first. Like I didn't like the looks of it, and it had a thumb stud, and I don't like thumb studs.
Hmm.
And but then I used it, and I loved it. Like I'm in line to get one. I'm kind of like you. I don't pay plus secondary market on any knife.
Right. It's easier
I
to
just
be
won't do
patient. Yeah.
it. There I've got stacks of stuff I have to make it through, and so I will just be patient. And if it doesn't come along, then it wasn't meant to be, right?
Mhm.
For me anyway. Or somebody will reach out to me and allow me to look at something or experience something. Jason Beatty allowed me to look at the Atom, and I really liked it. I mean, I was surprised.
Yeah.
But taking a second, and it also has a liner lock, and like I'm fine with liner locks and frame locks, but they're just not my favorite. And so
Mhm.
it had a frame lock, or a liner lock, and it had a thumb stud, which is like two things I typically don't like on knives, and I didn't like the looks of the single arc on the
Mhm.
back. It's just this one arc, and but then I used it, and for one, it's got super thin stock, and
Right.
I like thin stock knives, and so I think that's one of the reasons I liked it so well. And the action was really good. I think it's the price point on that knife is they've got it set at the right spot. So
Yeah. I'd say when I reviewed my Atom, one of the big things that I said about it was like how fair I think they're actually being at TRM
yes,
with that knife, because it seems to me, not across the board, but like a lot of US made companies where they're actually making the knives here, there is an added cost to that for sure. And I first in line to pay a little bit more for a US made knife than a Chinese knife. I'm all for it. But I feel like some of them kind of use it as an excuse at the same time to ratchet it up a little further than maybe they actually need to, like in terms of the margin that they're baking in, and just the pricing that TRM comes in at for their knives new consistently, for how good they are, the materials that they're using. It's impressive to me that they stay there, especially because the secondary has proven that people are willing to pay more, and that they still like integrity move, just like stay right there is pretty cool to me. They're good people over there. I've talked to Marianne a few times now, and I'm hoping to get a Shadow real soon, the new one with like the Axis
yeah,
style lock.
yeah.
They're just really nice, down to earth, good Americans who seem to be pretty honest in the way that they're handling the business. And there's the hardest thing is waiting for their knives. What's that?
What's interesting about that is you say, like their pricing is very fair, and it is. And what's interesting is like that has also made its way into the secondary market with that knife, and it's very self-regulating.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see like those knives getting way marked up, right?
Well, the Facebook group specifically has rules against it. You can only go up a certain percentage, which I think is a fair policy. I'm not opposed to it.
And then you go over to Knife Swap, and people will do the same thing. They regulate prices anyway over there, but depending on what it is and who it is, right? But yeah, so that's interesting. How they've set that, and also it's made it into the secondary, which is usually the other way around. Like it's secondary just takes off, and like it doesn't bother me. I mean, I just won't pay it. So
yeah, when I got both my Neutron and my Atom on the secondary market, but both of them were like from buddies who just gave them to me for what they were in them for. Yeah, actually, I think the Neutron I might have just gotten on Knife Swap, but I just happened to see someone post one for like I think I even got some extra sets of scales for it for like the cost that it was new. It was like the knife and 3 extra sets of scales, which was pretty rad. But yeah, I've also seen some people with Atoms charging like $350. It's been a while since I've seen anyone do that, but it happens.
Yeah, it's usually they have some scales with it if they're getting up there, right? But yeah, I mean, so that one surprised me in that way, and then the opposite way was the Spyderco Drunken. Like that, I wanted to love that knife, and then I didn't. And
I didn't either.
And it was like I'm a Spyderco fanboy, and like I was depressed after I handled it. I mean, it's just got a huge hot spot in the handle. I mean, it's like, and then the clip's obviously terrible, and it's way overpriced.
Yeah. I think I traded for the one that I owned of that knife, and that was one of those examples where I think I had it for less than a week before I turned it around and traded it for something else, because it was just like, and at the time I hadn't even experienced the Spidey Chef, but now that I've experienced both, I like the Spidey Chef better, and they obviously look really, really similar, and it's like feels better in my hand. The clip works instead of just not working. Like it's an objectively better knife, I think, for doing knife things. But yeah, that one was a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the treatment that they put on the handles, right?
That milling pattern is rad. Yeah,
was very nice, and I'm sure that led to a lot of the price. The tooling and the setup and everything else on that, but it's just out of range for that, and for me it just wasn't good. And so I mean, like the build quality on it was nice, like the had like the stone washing that they do out of Taichung, that was even better on the Drunken, and like they took it up to another notch or something, and then had a lock bar insert, an over travel stop, which I'm just waiting for Spyderco to convert all of their to that, like they should. Like they're behind,
right.
So
yeah, that's one of those things. So with you have a different set of knowledge because you've been a maker before with fixed blades, and you've shown me some folders that you've worked on. I've heard some makers say who don't use inserts that they're not necessary, and in fact they're worse for lockup. And I've heard like kind of competing arguments on that, but I feel like it's become the norm and kind of the accepted, like a knife is more valuable if it does have that feature, and a lock bar insert is a good thing. But you hear these people who don't use them seem to kind of talk about them as if they're not really an answer to a problem, and they're just a feature that's added because people think they should be there. I tend to err on the side of like, I would rather have a hardened interface and an over travel stop. I don't see why I wouldn't. But would you say there is a legitimate argument to the people who are just carbonizing the titanium? Like, is there some advantage to doing it that old way, or are they just trying to hold on to, they don't want to update their processes?
Yeah, I mean, there may be some, like, I've seen very few lock bars wear out, right? that were set up properly, right? I mean, obviously, I've seen plenty of knives that weren't, where they'll lock up at 80% or 90% right out of the box, and it's not too long before they're locking up all the way over. But when they're set up, properly from the beginning, I haven't seen too many of them actually wear out. So I don't know how big an issue it really is, if they carbonize the lock face, and that really does help with lock stick as well. That's one of my main issues, is just running titanium on steel like that.
Right.
And it also has to do with the way that the jigs that they use to actually cut the lock face in on the blade. But I think that you can get a lot more dialed system that's probably a little easier to manufacture with inserts.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's kind of you're grinding everything the same, and you can just pick up parts and put them in there. There's a little bit of fit up that still has to happen, but another main benefit that I like is almost everybody's integrating over travel stops into the insert now, and they're blind, right? You can't even see them in there, which is just great. So
it looks clean and it works. Yeah,
it looks clean, and So
I feel like
I prefer the insert myself.
For me, when I think about on the whole, like most of the knives that I've had that didn't have inserts, you're right, I've never had issues with them wearing out, and like I don't think that's as big of a thing. But I can consistently say I've had more knives that had some lock stick when they didn't have an insert, because whether it's carbonized or not, like I've had more lock stick. Like this Strider, which is a very nice frame lock objectively, and in terms of how much it costs and what it's made of and all that. This knife, the lock stick kind of comes and goes a little bit. I've adjusted the pivot a little bit to where now it's not nearly as bad as when I got this knife out of the box from the previous owner, but there's still like a little bit of lock stick there. And it just seems fewer and farther between on the ones that have inserts in them. So I don't know. I do think, in my opinion, it's worth it to update to using that. But
I completely agree. I mean, almost always eliminates lock stick. So
yeah. Plus, there is if you do ever wear it out, then all you're replacing is the insert instead of the whole frame lock side of the knife, right? Like if you started to have your lockup just wore out, which who does that? But if it happens and you don't have the insert, then either you've got to then add an insert to fix it, or you have to replace the whole lock side of the knife, right?
Yeah, well, they can stretch them a little bit. You can you can disrupt the metal, like you can hammer the inside of the lock and like lengthen the lock bar a little bit. Yeah, essentially, right?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, you can, like, essentially it's like cold forging. If you beat on it and thin it out, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Right.
And it can actually lengthen the lock bar, and you can help. That's one way to fix it. But I mean, if that happens, I'm just going to get a new knife. So
yeah, that makes sense.
I mean,
yeah,
but
a lot of these like talking points are also like, I've never had any lock really fail on a knife other than like really cheap budget knives from like when I was a kid that I was using really hard, to be fair, and like throwing at trees and stuff. Maybe that clone Strider that I dropped into the canyon, that lock might have failed, but there's like, I don't generally have issues with actual locks like failing or lockup going past 100%. I've never even had one get to 100% yet, and I have so many knives that I doubt it ever will. But
yeah,
I still demand niceness out of the gear that I get, like whether I actually take the car to 250 miles per hour if that's the top speed, or whether I max out at 140. Like it's still nice to know it's capable of going that fast, and it's cool to own.
I completely agree. I did have one, the CRKT CEO. It in my review of that, the lock bar went all the way over and stuck, and that was it. That was the end of the knife. So I need to return it or whatever. But and then I started doing a little bit of research, and apparently a lot of other people have had that issue too. So which doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's a $30 knife, and so.
Yeah, I've definitely had like on I think on the ZT308 full review video that I did, I've had lock bars like seize up if I've been batoning with a folder or something. But even then, once I was able to get it to like break past that like really tough stick that it had jammed in, once I broke it free, then the lockup was fine again. I've had no issues with it since. So I've like pushed knives to pretty far limits, but yeah, I've never had one fail on me. I've had some budget ones definitely not reliably lock up anymore. Like even with the lock engaged, you can just push the blade with enough force on the spine, it'll come shut. That's obviously a bad deal, but that's all budget pieces too. So I don't know. Yeah. I can't tell if someone's in the shower or if that's coming from my kitchen or what's happening, but I hear like running water. Anyway, so the Atom has been good surprising for you. Anything else that you've just been like generally really impressed with?
Let me find it.
Oh, it's raining. That's what it is. Sorry. I'm like, where is this water sound coming from? And here in Southern California, it doesn't rain very often, but it's literally 100% chance now until like all day tomorrow. Gotcha.
Nice. So maybe you'll get some water. Maybe you'll get some waterfall action at your hikes. You're right.
Yep. Yeah. When we get like if it rains just for a day, I generally don't get like the actual creek running. There will be some like little falls, little form just from the runoff. But if we get like a good couple of days or a week of rain, which this week it's rained like 3 or 4 times for a good few hours at a time, then it'll definitely start flowing. And if we're lucky tonight, it'll get cold enough too. We're up on the higher peaks. There'll be a little bit of snow. And when that happens, you get more like residual running water for a while as it melts, which is nice.
Yeah. So I haven't reviewed this one. I've been carrying it quite a bit. I've had it for a while, and I need to do it and send it to you. But it's this Wee Gava.
Oh yeah.
So this knife, it's rivaling other knives for my favorite knife right now, for sure. I mean, it like I don't like Wee does a great job, right? And Civivi, I don't like most of Wee's designs. They're just. Same. I mean, they're a little far out there for me, but this one is not, right? It's got very clean lines. It's got fairly thin blade stock, and it's just very well put together, right? Most Wee knives are put together, but this one's very usable, and it's just a standard clip point blade. Like clip point blade's like my favorite style blade anyway. So this one, I really like it, and I have a hard time not carrying it when I should carry other stuff. And it looks great too. I love this dark.
You got the black frame, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, it does look good, and it's got like a little bronze accent there on the pivot. So,
yeah, so I've seen quite a few people rave about that knife, and to be honest, I haven't purchased a Wee knife, like an actual like just one of their catalog knives, in quite a while, and I've only owned a couple. They've all been super nice. But I feel like most of the Chinese knives I've been buying recently have been like U.S. designer project, like knives just built by Riat, but they're from a U.S. designer or whatever. That's kind of like my sweet spot with Chinese knives at the moment. But that one has been more intriguing to me. And I think one of the only reasons I haven't pulled the trigger on one is just because it's flipper only. But some knives are fantastic with flippers.
This one is a really good flipper. I mean, it's the action on it's, great. You can see it there. So, it's not fully drop shut, like hydraulic, but it's pretty good. So don't buy one. I'll send you this one. So
okay,
I'll do a review on
this flipper tab too. The fact that it's pretty small,
very small, right? It's very small.
Yeah, that's a cool knife.
It is a cool knife, and it's fairly thin. It's not super deep carry pocket clip, but actually not a whole lot sticks out, and it's all black, and so it's very well done. So I really like this. Yeah. So this one, and then there's another Wee that I forget the name of it. That's pretty popular that that I'll probably end up picking up. Those out of stock, but those are like literally the only two that appeal to me from the Wii line. And there's several Civivi that are more appealing, but here lately, their new stuff that Civivi is coming out with is not very appealing to me either. Mostly because they're putting like thumb studs and flippers on them, and I don't like that at all. That's
not your jam.
I don't like I don't like thumb studs, to begin with, and so if it's got a flipper on it, I'm not going to use the thumb stud. But
see, I like having multiple deployment methods because then, like as a fidgeter, I just have multiple ways to play with it. But
I don't mind it, I just don't like thumb studs. So if it had a hole in it, I'd be fine with it.
Sure. Yeah. So I haven't bought a Civivi. I've bought one Civivi for myself ever, I think, and it was the Elementum. I got that micarta one. I ended up giving it away, and it was a good knife. It just it's outclassed by the other knives that I have and carry. And so if I'm making the point to carry one of my own knives and not something that I'm in the process of reviewing, just like something from the collection, I'm not going to reach for the $50 Civivi. But everything that I've tried of theirs has been really nice, and their quality is like really, really good for the money. But yeah, I see them constantly coming out with new designs, and a lot of the time it's like, oh, that looks cool, but like I'm never going to buy one. This week I saw they came out with one though called the Natter, which it's like a recurve tanto. It kind of looks like the Satori blade a little bit, and I'm thinking that may be one that I pick up to check out. And if I do, I'll probably end up giving it away as well after I'm done reviewing it. But it seems like one that might be worth looking at. Although I think it has thumb studs and a flipper, so not for you, Wes.
Yeah, I know it's close, right? I do like the company, and I like what they're doing. And if somebody's looking for a budget knife, I have a hard time not recommending them. Right? I mean, you basically the actions are really good for $60, and you're getting decent steel. And it looks like they're moving pretty much to like AEBL now, or putting it in there. Awesome. Or Nitro V or whatever, which is way underutilized in the industry. Yep. So like I think that when they start using that, people start getting that in their hands. I think that people are. I think you're going to see more companies start to use it. Hopefully.
Yeah, I've really liked on the Ferrum Forge Stinger, which is made by Wii Civivi, that they're using Nitro V on this. And when I talked to Elliot about this knife when I was at the shop and he gave this to me, he was mentioning that they're going to be using a lot of it at Wii, which is good. I think Nitro V, like you said, is literally it's very underutilized at this point. And for them to do this knife sub $100 in this configuration, that's a really good thing. And like you said too, when people are asking me like what knife to buy and they're on a budget, it's really, really difficult for me to recommend a knife other than the Civivi, because it's just such a safe bet that they're going to get it and they're going to really like it. They're going to find that it's fun to play with. And like a couple months ago, my brother-in-law, who's not into knives, finally is like, I want to get a knife. What should I get? And I'm like, how much do you want to spend? Because like I can show you my collection, but you're probably going to like puke when I tell you how much money is in it. And so he was like, I don't know, like under $100. I was like, look at Civivi and pick a model that you think looks good. And like for your hand size, he's a bigger dude than I am. I was like, probably get one that's at least a 3.5-inch blade, and like just pick one and try it, and you're going to like it. And he orders one, and now he's got like 3 of them because he's just like, this knife is awesome. And now he likes carrying a knife, and it's like, it gets him hooked. And so it's just a safe bet, like there's hardly anybody who gets one of those and is like, this is a junk knife, especially when they pay for it themselves. And it's like, oh, $50-$60 gets you this. That's awesome.
I mean, they are really, those companies like that are really changing the industry, in my opinion. And I think that, they've really given the American companies a run for their money, and they're having to step up their game,
Yep. Yeah, that's a conversation that maybe we should have, the whole America versus China thing, which I think both you and I are red-blooded Americans who are as patriotic as the next guy. I can at least speak for myself in that way. So just yesterday, as of when we're recording this yesterday, my Chris Reeve podcast went live. And
Yep.
one of the interesting things that always comes from that conversation, which if you listen to the whole 3-hour podcast, I don't think at any point I sound like I'm like I don't prefer American companies to otherwise. But one of the things that always comes out is people accuse you. Like I got one comment that called me a communist because I was hating on a hardworking U.S. company, which first of all, I tried to be very delicate and not like just hurl insults at Chris Reeve Knives. I just was being open and honest about where I see them. But how do you feel about the whole, there seems to be a movement in the community right now, and has been probably basically since COVID, I think is when it really started, where it really lit a fire under a lot of people that like some people have drawn a line in the sand, won't buy any Chinese made knives. How do you weigh in on that? Obviously, both you and I own plenty of knives made in China.
Yeah, I just got one today,
Yeah, which is fantastic. I'm carrying my Axon right now. I freaking love these knives.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about Bureau too. So I do like buying American, and I have a lot of American knives. Most of them are Spyderco. I love the Golden Factory,
Mhm.
but I have a lot of knives from their Siki City and from Taichung, from Taiwan as well. It's a tough thing, right? To only support American companies. Like you have to really do your due diligence and see where they're sourcing everything, and how much, like, at some point they're using Chinese something, right?
Right.
They're using Chinese made phones. They're using Chinese made computers. It's like, where do you draw this line of, supporting an American company? Do they have to source all the parts? Well, what about the metal?
Right.
Where was it smelted at? Does all that have to come from the U.S.? So it's a difficult thing, to especially when it comes to budget, right? For budget-minded people, or people who simply, they don't have a choice in it, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at like what Civivi's doing, and they're just simply outclassing a lot of the American-made companies. I mean, some of the designs aren't as good, but the execution for the price point is just better.
Right.
Simply, they're just doing a better job for that price, right? So it's a delicate balance. It's tough not to buy Chinese stuff because everything's made in China now. And I know with COVID, it is definitely a delicate situation. But Chinese people are still people, right? I mean, like this imaginary rules that we play by, these rules of nationalities, that we've made up and we all agree to play by, right? These are just imaginary things, right? And then as a society, we've agreed that we're going to all play by these imaginary rules. There's nothing physical about that, right? I mean, is there a physical line on the ground that makes something China, right? Versus, there's not. Same thing with property lines, everything like that. And so, like, this is a philosophical conversation too. About humanity. Are people from China evil? There's plenty of evil people in the U.S., right? There's plenty of lazy people in the U.S. and there's plenty of lazy people all over the world. It's like people are just people, right? And when it comes, like, are we talking about governments now? We're not going to support those governments. Well, what about the people who depend on our money in China to feed their kids, right? It's a huge rabbit hole,
Yeah. I feel like, so there's a lot to unpack in the subject in general, but like to me, when I buy a Reat built knife, let's say it's the secant, this new birch tree design. If this knife wasn't built by Riat, who would build it in the US? There is not a good answer right now. People will cite like Millet, maybe. I haven't seen many companies appear to be very satisfied when they've tried working with Millet. I'll say that in a diplomatic way. I've seen problems with wait times and with QCs, and I'm not saying that Millet is awful or horrible or anything like that, but if I was deciding to have a knife built right now, which is a path that I'm considering going down and exploring, the best options for me, business-wise, in terms of somebody who's trying to like break into it, or if you're a maker like Birch Tree Blades, is to go to one of the Chinese OEMs who's able to get it to you fast and consistent and to make it really well and to have it less expensive. And so like, am I for slave labor? Absolutely not. No. Am I for communism and communist governments? Absolutely not. But I don't see like it as the same thing to buy a knife that a designer in the US who I like and appreciate their work worked with this OEM overseas to have it built. And I feel like it's this thing where a lot of people, especially in the knife community right now, they kind of look at it, and this is a fair way to look at it, as like a one controllable for them, because they do have so many Chinese made products that there aren't alternatives for. And so they're like, this is just my hobby. I have plenty of knives. I'm not going to buy any more Chinese ones because that's one thing that I can make sure I'm only getting US made ones. But that said, like, I've tried a lot of US made knives. There's still plenty more for me to try out, and I plan to, but I've also tried a lot of Chinese made knives. And sometimes the Chinese made knives are nicer. Like, there are, just because something is made in the US does not make it a good product. And there are plenty of garbage products, especially under the budget line, coming out of the US. When you're looking at nice knives in the US, then they can be as nice, but usually they cost more to be as nice. So like, I'm willing to pay that little bit more if it's something made in the US, but I'm not always willing to pay double or triple to get the same amount of quality just because it's made here. Like, I'm a consumer at the end of the day. I have a budget. And yeah, especially when I'm supporting American businesses in the process who are bringing those knives in and retailing them, or they're the designer and they had it built for them. Like, that still feels good to me when I buy this birch knife. Would it feel better to buy one of his customs that he built there with his hands using all US materials? Yes, but that's a totally different purchase. That's not the same thing as buying a production knife. And I play with production knives. That's like the realm that I'm in. So I don't know. I find it interesting that so many people jump to the extreme of like, you're a communist, or you're supporting communism, or you support slave labor, or any of these things, which, like, I haven't seen any reports that the people who work at Riat Knives are communists. Like, they live in a communist country. That sucks for them. Like,
it's not their choice either, right? I mean,
yeah,
they were
and
born
some
there.
of them may be sympathetic to that cause. Others there may not. Like, you could also, like, should Chinese people not buy American products because now Biden is the president and Trump isn't, or because Trump is the president now and now Obama isn't? Like, it seems interesting to me to like pick products based on that. And I would definitely prefer to have US made stuff, but I just think it gets oversimplified by a lot of people, where it's very like, you have to all US. But then like, Koenig makes their knives in Idaho, just like Chris Reeve does, but they use M390. That's an Italian steel, which brings up another question. Are Italian knives okay? Like, are they communist in Italy like they are in China? Are they doing the same things that the Chinese government is? Like, that's a totally different part of the world. And I don't see, like, is it all US or is it just not China? Like, so many people land in so many different places on it. And then certain spots that they land in, it seems like they try to hurl insults at the ones who didn't also land there.
Yeah, while typing on their Chinese phone, right?
Yeah. Which, like,
I mean,
I've seen some people who I really respect. Like, I follow Bill Koenig, and like, he is actively trying to find US made alternatives to a lot of the products in his household, and he's seeking them out. And I don't think anyone can be perfect at buying all US made stuff at this point, because our infrastructure, just frankly, in this day and age, isn't really set up for it. But like, he'll be proud of it when he finds a pair of like US made shoes that he likes. And then if he's getting this random tool for his shop, he wants to make sure he buys a US made one, even if it's a little more expensive. I respect that. I think that's good. But he's also using Italian steel on his knives. I mean, and I consider that a good US company with US employees making US made products. Some people.
Why isn't he using Crucible? Yeah. Why isn't he using Crucible? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that just continues to seem to like always be brought up. And maybe what I need to do is have a podcast with somebody who's like really gung ho about like all USA made and like unwavering on that, and pick their brain in terms of their logic. Because I feel like most people that I talk to, it's kind of like you and I just went back and forth right now, where it's like, it seems pretty easy to me to prick a lot of holes in the logic of somebody who's like, you only buy US, because they're surrounded by products, undoubtedly, from the TV in their house to their microwave and the shoes on their feet and the shirt on their back. Like a lot of these things are not made in the US. And so it just seems kind of like a fallacy when they're when they're trying to come down on you for buying a knife that Michael Birch had made in China, because that's the way he was able to sell it for $350 at an amazing like quality ratio.
And you know what? Like and that helped his family too, right? By buying that knife. I mean, he may have better profit margins on that knife than he does his customs.
I even went so far as to make sure that I bought it from him on one of his drops instead of buying it from a retailer, because he's a maker that I really like. So like, if that's possible, I want to get it directly from him, because that means he's making that whole margin by selling it the same amount that the retailer would, and they're not getting a cut. Like, I like Michael Birch. I appreciate his work, and I want to support makers like him. So like, let me get it direct from him. You know, that's Joseph Vero. Like, I don't think he works with any retailers yet. Maybe he will. But even if he does, if he continues to sell the knives himself, I like Joseph Vero. I think he's a cool dude. I've been able to talk to him. I want to support his like mission and what he's setting out to do. I like his knives. So like, I want to buy from that guy. It doesn't bother me one bit that he's having these built overseas, because if he tried to have these built in the US, it wouldn't happen. It just, the growth he achieved in 2020 as a company to break away from his day job, become purely Vero Engineering knife maker, hire his wife as his one employee, and like set out on this journey of being a knife designer and producer. Like, that wouldn't have happened if he was trying to like source reliable US manufacturing for building these knives.
Yeah. I mean, he wouldn't be able to do it, you know? And, well, for one, like nobody would be able to do that, right? Like, he wouldn't be able to get that many models out in 2020, because we don't even have the people in the US, the companies in the US that could do it, right? Like, there are enough companies, but how, you know, what's their backlog, right? And you know, we would like, me and you wouldn't be holding these two knives right now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and the CNC shops that aren't used to building knives, who like you could foreseeably hire to maybe make your knives, a lot of them just aren't like in the industry and know how to build knives and have the reputation of like, if you look at it in terms of the risk of starting with a new CNC shop who's never built a folding knife before, compared to going to Best Tech or Riat or one of these companies who what they build is knives all day, every day. Like, it's just, it seems like a much safer bet to me, as somebody who'd like to design and sell knives, to go to the one who's set up to do it, can do it quickly, can do it economically for you as the person who has to shoulder that cost. Like, I wish that there was good options in the US. I would love for that to be the case, but until there is, I feel like it's unfair to like, oh, screw them for making their knives in China. Like, it's the best option on the table for them.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I try to buy US knives when I can. But if there's a cool knife that's, you know, from China, I'm going to buy it, you know? Like, I'll just show you. Here's like the ones, you know, at my desk. And if you look in here, like, most of them are US knives, right? Most of them are Spyderco's out of Golden, and they're like my favorite knives that I keep handy and compare and bring me joy, right? So I like US knives for sure. And there's plenty of good ones, right? Benchmade, Microtech, Protech, like you can definitely do it, right? But us as reviewers, it's hard not to look those knives,
Yeah,
we're missing out. So
yeah, I'm all for. If you look at, I've got 2 knife cases next to me, but like the whole top couple rows in my little cut club box, and then my big one, it's like U.S. made, all U.S. made, and then there's some that aren't in that case. And then if I go to my other case, it's like still probably about 50-50 of like U.S. made to the opposite. And I prefer it. My money is where my mouth is. I buy more of them, and I keep more of them when I do buy them, for sure. Like, there are some genuine, really, really good Chinese made knives that are higher quality for less money. And as somebody who appreciates quality and a deal, it just kind of is what it is.
Like this, it's this Wii right here. I mean, this is a phenomenal knife for $250. Like,
absolutely.
It is dialed. I mean, it is, it's 20 CV. So they're using U.S. made steel.
Mm-hmm.
And the action on is phenomenal. They do a really good job, grinding. They're super thin. The geometry's good. Like, there's no way that you could get something like this made in the U.S. for that kind of
money. A $200 knife in the U.S., you can start looking at, like, I think the
PM2.
best examples. Oh yeah, the PM2, or there's like the Protec Malibu, but that's aluminum and not titanium. The PM2 is G10 and not titanium. So like to get a titanium frame lock for $200 in the US, you start looking at, I guess ZT would probably be the closest example. And they have some options that are
here's another good one, right? The 5.5. This is like, I'm having a hard time, not carrying this one too. So
yeah. So I think you and I are probably kind of in somewhat of a consensus that, like, being built.
I'm sure we'll get some interesting comments down below for sure. So,
which, so be it. I've never been afraid of the comment section.
Nope.
So let's switch gears a little bit. I feel like, we can keep going on that a lot. But would you say, when you're purchasing a knife, in terms of like features, are there certain things that you look for, or kind of is there certain criteria? Like, are there deal breakers for knives that you're looking at? Or,
I mean, there used to be, right? Definitely. Like, so I had refined my before I started doing reviewing and was just a collector, I had really refined a checklist of things that kept me from buying too much stuff, right?
Sure.
And it was really came down to no thumb studs, flat ground, usually deep carry wire, usually deep carry clip, and good materials, obviously. Like, that's going to be there. And I would prefer, this wasn't a deal breaker, but I prefer locks that kept my finger out of the path of blade travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that might be. And so those really kind of kept me into a very small category when I was looking at knives. And I started doing the same thing with flashlights too. Like, I had like too many flashlights, and I found the ones that I started noticing I would carry, only a few, and then they all had similar things. And so I started refining what I was really looking for, and kind of narrowed those things down too. But, the only thing that I really don't have anything now. I'll check out anything at this point, right? If it's becoming popular, there's probably a reason now, right? And I need to look at it and maybe broaden my horizons. I still don't like hollow ground blades. It's just I have a thing about it. Some people think that they're better. I think it's in certain circumstances they are better, and light to shallow in shallow to medium cuts they are better.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from medium to full depth cuts, they're way worse. Some people like the fact that you can get more sharpenings out of them and still keep a thinner edge.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like flat ground blades, to tell you the truth. So I like the consistent feel when I cut through something of a flat ground blade, and I don't like the binding, and I just don't like the looks of them either. And unless it's like a high flat, unless they've used a very large wheel, like a 20-inch wheel or something like that, then I actually start liking the flat ground blades.
It's taller,
much taller. And it almost becomes a flat ground, but it's also you kind of get it's almost a best of both worlds at that point. So
yeah, no, that makes sense in terms of edge profile, because when you have a really abrupt hollow where it's like deep, quick, right, and then it goes up to a thick blade stock, I feel like sometimes those look really cool and they can feel really cool, but the sensation that I get when I'm cutting like sheets of cardboard with the knife that's like that, it's so much less pleasant than having a full flat ground knife, because you're fighting with that blade stock in a different way. Even if the blade stock thickness is the same, it's easier for it to skate off of the full flat grind than it is to battle that curve in the edge, or in the profile, and get to that thick spot in a different way. So it makes sense. I think I'm less sensitive to hollow grinds than you are, and on certain knives they bother me more than others, but in general I prefer flat grinds and full flat if possible. That's part of why I think both you and I really like a lot of Spydercos, is because even if they're not the thinnest behind the edge knives out there, the profile for the types of cutting tasks that I do, they feel better to me when you're really using them.
Yeah, I mean that's it for me. I don't like multiple grinds either. Like I just don't like it. Where someone's made the tip much shallower, and or it's essentially thicker at the tip, right? I just don't like that look, and it does the same thing. I know some people do it to strengthen the tip, but most times it's just done for looks now, and it really does. I just don't like the looks of it. So
yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the other thing that's probably I guess I am developing a bit of a list. Not a fan of Damascus or Mokutai.
Sure.
So I just don't like a little bit of Mokutai on something like a clip or a backspacer that matches the clip and a pivot. Like that looks good. But when you put Mokutai handles on a Damascus blade, like I don't know what to look at.
Full dress.
I mean, it's like, what am I looking at here? My eyes are just like going nuts. So,
right. Yeah, I get that some people like all the materials possible thrown onto a knife, but like the only piece of like Mokutai, or I guess it was like black Damascus, that I've ever had that I really liked was on I had a Sharp by Design Evo Typhoon, the first gen, the Japanese Tanto one. Loved that knife, and I came into a black Damascus clip for it. It was an Adam Purvis clip, and it was funny how I got it, because the boss that I worked for at the time, the owner of the company, he really liked my Evo Typhoon, and it was like I had new knives all the time. I was in the hobby, and he always wanted to check out what I'd gotten, and that was the first one that he really wanted one of. And so he wanted to get one Japanese Tanto just like mine, but they were really hard to come by. They still are a lot of the time, although the new wave just came out. But anyway, I finally found him one. There was one for sale, and the seller had this Damascus clip for it. And so he just wanted the knife bad enough to pay extra for this guy who had it with the clip. And so it gets there, and he hated it because it was like purple and bronze, and which I also really dislike. Like the multicolor ano that you see on a lot of Damascus just bugs me. but so he was like, I don't want that clip. Can you put the factory one back on for me? And I was like, sure. Can I buy this clip off of you? Because it's at least worth something. Like maybe I'll sell it. Maybe I'll try it on mine. And he was like, nah, just keep it. So I come into this really nice clip, right? And then I just got Wink rust and stain remover or whatever and removed the ano. And because it was like zircuti, it had the zirconium in it. It was really cool, like black and then light titanium and dark titanium layers. And it looked really nice when I pulled all the color out of it on that monochrome knife, because it was like this cool, it matched the carbon and the titanium, but in general, like unless it's really tasteful little touches of like pivot collars and backspacers, even then I still don't want it to be colored Damascus. It looks like an oil spill to me, like when oil's on the surface of water, and it just looks, I don't like the weird multicolor vibe you get from that stuff. But
yeah, it's like, it reminds me of those the Kershaw knives with the PVD coating, the rainbow knives back
that's
in
funny.
the
I literally almost said it makes me think of like they used to make the Kershaw leak in that like rainbow. And I remember being at gun shows in like the late 90s, early 2000s when those knives were like the hot stuff. And those were like the more expensive version. And it looked like something, I don't know. It looked too childish for me as a child to have a knife that was colored like that.
So but I do like colorful knives. I have a lot of muted knives, right, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a thing for the FRN colored Spydercos, specifically the natives. So I know that you're not a native fan, but that if I was to collect, and I'm having a hard time with my collection right now. Yeah, see,
I got some color around.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with my collection right now, because I don't get to really experience it anymore, because I've got this major first world problem of having too many knives.
It's an adjustment.
It is. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. I'm thinking about selling off some of my collection and doing something else with it, and then just picking one thing to collect. Like I like the hunt a little bit, right? And so if I just pick natives, right, I think that would be sustainable for me, because one, they're fairly cheap, right? They're not super cheap, but like that's not a thing most people would probably raise an eye at, $120 to $200 knife for collecting. So I like the colorways. I like they're lightweight, and I like being able to sometimes match my knife with my clothes. So
sure. Yeah, it's funny how like collections evolve, and I've talked about this a couple times recently, but I have some loaners out right now that once they get back, I've stopped sending out loaners for a moment. I'll send tons more to the friends of mine who have channels and to you. Like I've got no problem sending loaners, but I'm waiting for everything to get back. And then I'm going to do a collection update video because I like to do those periodically. And then I'm probably going to sell. It's hard because like I say I'm going to sell a lot of knives, and then I look over at my collection and I'm like, maybe I'll sell 3 or 4. I don't know. I don't really know how many I'm going to sell, but I do need to like trim it down quite a bit, because the more knives you have coming in all the time to review, between loaners, knives that I buy, and now like there are cases where companies will send me a knife to review, and like I really appreciate that. That's awesome. But all that like equates into the knives that I own just not getting carried very much, because I want to be true to my process and carry the stuff I'm working on reviewing. So like some knives I can't bring myself to sell. Like I'm not going to sell my Arius, even though I get to carry it once or twice a month when I'm like cheating on whatever I'm working on reviewing. But it's like, it's hard because I own these things because I love them, and I love them because I like to carry and use them, and I get to carry and use them less. So they just make less and less sense to keep around when I could turn them into new stuff to review, or heck, I could turn them into a new bike. Like there's a lot of things I could do by selling a few of these. So yeah, it's a different type of problem, but like you said, it's a very welcome first world kind of problem. It's an advantage to have.
Yeah. I'm not complaining too much. But I like, it is a bit of a struggle for me because, like I do have a connection with some of these, I know that's a weird thing to say, right?
Not weird to me.
Yeah. So, it's probably because we're very similar, but a lot of people like you have a connection with a thing, like a little bit. So, uh, and maybe it's, linked to memories as well, right? Or experiences that you had with that knife. It's like a smell, when
Mhm.
you smell something, and it brings back an experience. So, you know, the, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I'm thinking about selling off some definitely stuff. Like I've got stuff in boxes that, has never been pulled out. So I'll probably definitely be offloading those. So I
Yeah.
don't keep dupes. I do have one duplicate left, and that's a PM2 K390
Mhm.
because that's like my favorite knife. So
It's a great knife. Have you had a
yeah,
10 BPM too?
no, I haven't. I really wanted one, but I got a K390, and it's very similar steel. So yeah,
Yeah.
they look great. So
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not a multiples guy in general. Like even let alone like having duplicates. I don't usually have repeat knives in my collection, but right now
yeah.
I have 3 PM2s, which is weird for me
Mhm.
because I don't normally do that. But the ones that I have are like I have the two River's Edge Cutlery ones, the avocado and the scorpion, which like I can't really imagine letting either of these go. They're just I love them too much and they're fun and I like them both. I carry both.
Yeah.
But then I also have the one I just built, which was the factory second that I modified. And so I've like
Your
made
Max.
this one mine. Yeah, it's fun in its own way. And so they're kind of different enough. And I don't know. I'm less harsh on myself about like
Yeah.
if I have that justifiable of a reason to keep them, like each of those make me happy enough, then those aren't ones I'll really look at to sell. But other ones just don't spark as much in me, you know?
Yeah, I'm, like a PM2 holds a special place in my heart for sure, right? I mean, here's like I've got more than these, but these are the ones that are just handy right here. I've also got a Max Cement new in box and another K390 new in box. But this is 204P, that I modified and I like it. It's got the
Mm-hmm.
bronze green, and this is my first PM2, and it's from the
Bento
first
box.
run. It's the first run, the very first run that they did, and
Awesome.
yeah. So I'd like this is I've carried this knife more than any other knife ever.
Mm-hmm.
So and then here's a K390 that I built out. That's
Those are
banana.
fireside scales, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I love fireside scales. I still have them on my shaman, the seafoam.
yeah. It's very interesting. I do like the feel, but I'm very tempted to buff it too, and
Mm,
like make it. Like I like the feel of buffed material.
mhm.
Like I like buffed micarta, where it's specifically like a lot of people think it gets slick, but if you do it right, like the Vero stuff, it's a fairly it's not a smooth micarta, right?
Mhm.
And so if you buff this, it still stays grippy. But one of my favorite things to do, and when I was building knives, I would do this, is I would sandblast the micarta and then buff it.
Mm,
And what it does is it ends up eating the top layer of the epoxy or whatever glue type material they use.
mhm.
It kind of eats that away, and then when you buff it, the other material is like proud a little bit, right?
Mm.
And so it's not. So it's like this in between type of here. I'll show you. I got one back here. You'll be able to see it. So you've seen this one. This is the one of the fixed blades that I built. But that's kind of like the finish that you get on it.
Yeah. Interesting. So, do you think if you did that to the Tarot Tough, it would be similar, like pretty much the same?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would happen. I would be very interested to do a couple things. Just buff it and see
Mhm.
what happens, and then blast it and buff it and see
Yeah.
what happens, because it's such an interesting material. But you can see there, it's like it's still it's not it's smooth and it's rough, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be
So,
curious to see what would happen on Tarot Tough, because I've felt a variety of different like textures of micarta, even when it's the same like canvas micarta, right? So like
mhm.
this birch tree secant has like a less fluffy feel than this
Yep.
Vero Axon does. The Axon, it just feels like more of the canvas and less of the epoxy, like it has been kind of blasted, which also makes it look drier. Whereas this one, even when it's as dry as it gets, it still has like a darker color than this one when it's dried out. And I've also had like totally polished micarta where it just feels like glass on the surface because it's like a final layer of epoxy that's sealed it all together. And so like, I don't think I've ever seen Tarot Tough other than just the way, especially because it's kind of newer. I think I only have it on those Fireside Scales and then on my Vanex Shark from Steingraber Performance Knives, which are both in seafoam, which is awesome because Alex let me pick on that Shark what color I wanted. But yeah, I really like the way it feels. I'd be curious to see how it changes with those methods. So hopefully you
Yeah, me
document
too.
it.
Yeah, I'll do something for sure. So, because I mean, I'm kind of like different things. Like that a lot of other people wouldn't like. A lot of people don't like buffed micarta.
Mm-hmm.
They like right now the trend is like this, and then let it patina or whatever. Like, yeah, that's cool too. But I think this is cool too. Like
Yeah.
this looks and feels awesome all the time. So
I like it both ways. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not opposed to either. So
yeah,
you alluded to obviously you've shown me some of the fixed blades you've made and even a folder you've made and stuff, but you have a history of making knives in addition to collecting knives and now making videos about knives and all this. So for those who are listening, could you kind of snapshot what kind of knives you used to make and what kind of a backstory is with that side of you? Because I think it's illuminating too on how you review knives now that you have experience as a maker. You bring something different to the table than those of us who haven't been on that end of it.
yeah, sure. So kind of. So yeah, first of all, I just like making stuff. Like from a kid, I was just tearing stuff apart and making things, and it's just one of those things. The way my brain works, and so I love knives, right? And so it was like just a natural thing that I wanted to make some knives. And so I first started with like a lot of people like modding knives or customizing it, and then I started buying like finished knife blanks and doing handles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting handles on it. And then, it got into, started, drawing my own designs. And then, one thing led to another. And, I started buying some bar stock and started, getting a few tools here and there, a lot of hand tool type stuff. And then, Tom Crine befriended me and kind of like showed me the ropes with a lot of things and kind of helped me along in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I started making mostly utilitarian type knives, fixed blades, outdoors type stuff, or smaller like I have, let me grab a one or two. I don't have a whole lot of them left. My son's got a bunch.
Well, I'm sure the people on YouTube want to see what you have made.
So I made a lot of smaller things like this. So, come on, focus.
That looks awesome.
Yeah. Here.
I think it's picking up on your face.
Here, let's do this.
Oh, look at you, fancy man. Here, I'm going to make you full screen for a second. Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah. So there's a better shot. So this was hollow ground, but this is on a 20-inch wheel here.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do too many hollow grinds, but when I did them, I would use like a 20-inch wheel. And so this is a lot of the stuff that I made was just very simple utilitarian lines, but had good ergonomics and nice performance. This was in XHP, which I was a huge fan of it. This is when it really started kind of hitting the scene, like 6 or 7 years ago. It was really kind of ramping up. So I used the XHP and 204p. I started using it quite a bit. And here's the model that I was showing you earlier. So this is something a little bit bigger. This was called an Outdoorsman, or it is called the Outdoorsman. So you can see that a lot of similarities in lines, just very simple lines that kind of flowed together. Like, I like things being very geometrically correct, meaning coincident and collinear and tangent. I like everything, all of the arcs and tangents to arcs and lines to be tangent to one another, and so I like everything to kind of flow together. And so most of the stuff that I built was like that. And then here's one of the folders that I put together. The clip's not the best. It was kind of an afterthought, but this was one of the only ones that I did before I stopped making knives. So this is something I'm looking at possibly bringing back out and iterating on. This was obviously using the Spidey hole, but I was looking, to have a very slimline design and still utilize the opening hole here. But
looks great.
Yeah, so that's that's my whole thing with folders. Like, I like folders that look good open and closed. I think it's very important. Look, these Veros look good open and closed. This 5.5 looks open, good, and closed. This Benchmade bug out does not look good closed. Right?
Yeah, you got that gap.
Got this big snaggle tooth right here, like that. Like, I almost can't own this knife because of that, to tell you the truth. But everything else about this knife is incredible. So I do like this bug out, except for the snaggle tooth. So it's important to me. Like, everything has to flow. So when I first see a knife, when I'm thinking about buying one, that's one of the first things I look at is just how's the overall lines, put together. And, it invokes a feeling to me when I look at the knife. And if it's disruptive, I don't like it. Like, if it's just a thing, right? Like, if the lines are disruptive, somehow it just doesn't set well with me, and I'm just not going to like the knife. For some reason, it's like I don't know what it is. It's just a feeling I get when I look at something. Kind of like what's the name of the when people don't like the look of holes?
I used to know.
I forget the name of it.
Literally had that. I can't remember either, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. They don't like the look of holes. It's like, it invokes a feeling, right? And so it's the same thing. Like, I like everything to be very almost Zen-like when you look at it. Like, it should make you feel comfortable, like, looking at it. And so that's like this. That's the aesthetic that I like to go for. When I design stuff and when I look at stuff, it's like, oh yeah, that looks nice, and the lines flow, and it feels comfortable to look at, right? And it doesn't. But some people may want to invoke the feeling of, this knife here I'm searching is probably the opposite of that, and I do like the looks of this knife for some reason, right? So, but it also flows well too, in other aspects. So anyway, so I made knives for probably 3 or 4 years at least. I did my own heat treat, did the whole thing, and then it got to be too overwhelming for me. Having books, right, and not feeling that I could take any time off. Where every spare minute that I had felt like I needed to be making knives for other people. And so it kind of like took the enjoyment out of it for me. So I ended up selling off my tools and, just like pulling away from the knife industry altogether for a while. And it just like it consumed me and consumed a lot of my personal time and took away time from my family. And so that was probably 5 years ago that I did that, like kind of pulled back. And then, as I've kind of got more settled into my career and my kids have gotten older, I've now have more time. And so, essentially, I wanted to come back to the community, but in a different way, right? I wanted to be able to use my knowledge of knife making and all my experience, doing design work, things like that, and like be able to do, have a different perspective, right? On reviews because of those things that I've been able to experience. And so that's kind of my take on, and I haven't really shared that with my viewers yet. But I'm going to soon, right? And a lot of it is I'm waiting for more viewership, right? I don't want those videos to get lost or pushed down, and so it's coming, right? I think I'm starting to finally get some traction with the channel, and like I'm about to hit 1,000 subs finally, and which is good. I think I'm at like 952 or something like that. That's when I checked today, and so I'm really close. Probably next week I'll hit, and then I'll start. That was one of my goals, is like get to 1,000 subs, and then like see how I want to change the channel and start taking more feedback from the channel, and see where people see where the channel wants to go from there. But I'd like to do some more long form discussion on just different things about the industry. And so anyway, I know that's a long answer to your question about how I got into the building knives, but
no, that's perfect. I would prefer the longer the better on the info about you, because that's why I have you here as a guest today. I do think it's cool. So the first time that you and I spoke on the phone a couple months ago, that couldn't have been more than like 3 months ago or something. And you were at like 300 and something subscribers, I think. So you've definitely progressed quite a bit in terms of how many people are subscribing to the channel. And that's a great thing. Obviously, I encourage anybody who's listening to this on my platforms to follow Wes, because I think we have very complementary styles in that we're kind of opposite the way we approach videos. But I think you genuinely do have a distinct take on things, because not only do you have experience being a maker and learning from other makers and kind of being in those conversations, which a lot of people surface level just don't get to be a part of, but you also have the perspective of having kind of taken a step back from that period of time and then re-entered with, like you said, a new perspective. And I don't know, I'm just big on people who are able to illuminate things for me in a different way than I can for myself. That's why, selfishly, one of the big reasons why I wanted to have this podcast was so that I could talk to people who just have those drastically different experiences, because your way into the knife community and your existence in it has been so different from mine. And I'm constantly learning things from you that I just haven't had access to the information. So it's really cool that you come at it in such a unique way. And I can't really think of any other YouTube channels right now that are similar in that way, where they like have a history of making. And there are some makers on YouTube who are currently making, and they're sharing part of their process, which is also very cool. Nothing against that. But I can't think of somebody who like used to make and is now doing content creation. And the types of projects you're working on, which we can talk about next, are like not knives, but are like knife and EDC related a lot of the time, which is really cool. Plus, like you said, you are still working on some knives as well. But I wanted to talk about the product that you just started showing on Instagram this week. It's like a tool organizer thing.
Yeah. So and really this is one of the things that I love to do is like just create stuff. And I do I do like design work on the side, as you know, for other people in the community, and I have for many years.
I can't say for what yet, but Wes has helped a friend of mine and I with a current design project that hopefully soon we'll have more news about. But Wes is a phenomenal designer in terms of creating 3D models and working like CAD files and then also 3D prototyping. So if you're looking for a guy, Wes is mine.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I've done quite a bit of that in the past, and you know, it's just part of making, right? I always loved drawing, and I've been in the CAD industry for most of my career now. So like essentially, I've been, some form of CAD for 20 plus years. Right. And so it, eventually led to 3D modeling and doing other stuff and like doing prototyping. And so anyway, back to the item you're talking about it's this toolbox holder. Right. And this is my logo, and it's 3D printed right now, and that's probably the way it's going to be. I think it looks neat, and I know a lot of people don't like the looks of 3D print, with the lines and things like that. But and I didn't like it at first, but it's actually growing on me now because you can do interesting things with the lines, and the way that the slicer works. You can kind of control the line work a little bit. And it actually adds a little bit something to it. Like you can see the line work here.
On the surface, it also kind of looks like fabric of a pocket in a little bit of a way because it's got that grain to it.
Yeah. And so if you, and I don't want to get too far away, but, a lot of people think, oh, it's got the lines or whatever. But you know what else has got lines? Knives from right? These are grind lines. Like these aren't beauty marks here, guys. You know what I mean? This is made from the type of manufacturing process, right? So it's like anyway, it's a little bit of a soapbox for me. How people want to see specific lines or something. I'm like, well, that's due to the manufacturing process, and now it's become a bit of a fad, or it's become part of the what people are looking for stylistically, and it all just comes from
belt satin now.
Yeah, and it's just all comes from production methods, right? Which is interesting. Which that all started from, a hollow grind started because of the round grinding stones, right? And because that was the best way to remove material like that. Anyway, so long story short, so this is like essentially a little holder for my favorite tools that I used. And this nests in here. And I like these Vera drivers a lot. I've tried a lot of the other drivers, and they're good. But these are super compact, and I really like this mechanism, the way that it works. You just push out, and then when you want to put a new one in, you just do that, and it snaps back. And they're very ergonomic. And people probably think it's weird that I have 3 of them in here, but I like to have these set up, in a T10, T8, and T6 because that's the typical ones. You could get by with just one and then swapping them out, but really you need 2 drivers because sometimes, and as you know, Jake, things will get stuck and you'll have to put a driver on each side and break something loose. But anyway, I like to have all 3. And then here is the Loctite that I like to use. I know that Nick Shabazz made this popular, and I really like it. It's definitely very useful for small screws, right? You can just put a little dab or put the screw. Well, I just touch the screw, and that's about it. Or I spin the screw into it, and it's a lot less messy than the tubes. So I made this where it nests in there, and then here's KPL, which is a really good knife lube that I like to use, and this again is made to nest directly into there. And then the final thing, which a lot of people don't use very much, but I find that I use it all the time. Once I started using a plastic pry tool on knives, like I'm always reaching for one now, and so I designed this one. And it's kind of based off of the one that I had normally picked up which was, let's see if I got it somewhere. Kind of based off of this one a little bit, not exactly, but you can see it's got some similarities there. But this is like a door panel removal tool, right?
Yeah, I've
for
had
popping
tons
like
of,
door panels
tons of those for automotive doors. Yeah,
yeah, or for any type of like non-marring wedge that you need to. And you can see I've already I messed this one up pretty good, and I use it all the time. But anyway, what I use this for is popping off scales, right? You want to put this in between, like a stuck scale after you've screwed it off. A lot of times they're stuck on there, and it's kind of hard. But you can stick this piece of plastic in there and wiggle it a little bit. You're not going to worry about messing it up. So that's something that I thought was kind of nice to have. And so I wanted to design something to hold all this stuff at my desk because I was tired of everything rolling around and not being able to find it. And so I decided to make this. You can see everything kind of nests in here. And then, which is kind of neat as well, is I've embedded magnets in the lid, in the four corners, and then also magnets on both the, you can see these little pillars I designed. It's got magnets on the bottom and on the top, so that you can put the lid on there and it will go around with it. So if you want to pick this up, move it somewhere, you could. And then it kind of keeps this a little snug on the top. You can't turn it upside down or anything. You might be able to turn it upside down, which you wouldn't want to shake it, but essentially just kind of keeps it snugged on there. And I've also designed everything. Let's see if I can do it without dumping everything out, where everything's within a millimeter of the top, right? So that I measured all the clearances, and so that you can turn this upside down or shake it around or whatever, and then when you open it back up, everything's still snug,
in its rightful spot. Yeah,
exactly. And so anyway, I thought this was a fun thing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making a video soon and posting it on my channel for my 1,000 giveaway, 1,000 subscriber giveaway. And so I'm making one of these. In fact, I just finished just as we started. You can see here, this just came off the printer. I still haven't cleaned the bottom yet. Here's the lid. And so I'm making one of these that is fully stocked with all of this stuff, which it adds up quick. All this stuff here. It's about $90 worth of stuff that I'm putting in here, and that's going to be my 1,000 subscriber giveaway.
That's so cool, dude.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the thing.
So I'm curious, and I'm sure people listening and watching are curious as well. After you've got the one that you've made, you're doing one for the giveaway. Will that be something that you'll offer for sale that people can order? Will you keep printing a whole bunch of them? If so, will they have an option to buy it pre-stocked with the stuff, or do they buy it and then you have a list of exactly what fits in it, or how does that work moving forward?
Yeah, I'm figuring it out right now. I was waiting to see kind of what the what the response was to it, which seemed to be pretty good. I don't have a huge Instagram following right now, but everybody seemed to like it and thought it was interesting. I know not everybody is familiar with these Vera drivers, but they are phenomenal. And these guys are about $16 each. And so they're not cheap. They're very well made. They compete with VHA. These are all VHA bits in here as well, or WeHa, or however you want to say it. I'm pretty sure it's German, so it's V.
Gotcha.
I could be wrong.
Like
yeah.
Volkswagen?
So what I was, yeah, exactly. So I'm going to include everything in here: T10, T8, T6 of bits, and a spare set of T8, T10, T6 to go with it. And I'm not sure if it takes a while to print these guys. This is a 16 hours, and this one's
just the lid.
Just the lid, and the base is 14 hours, and so. It's essentially it's 2 days for me to print one, which isn't terrible. It's not like I'm going to get like 100 orders or anything, I wouldn't think. But I'm also looking at getting another printer because, to tell you the truth, like, this sucker's running all the time. I'm always doing something for somebody or for myself. And so the thing gets backed up, and I need to do some maintenance on it, but I also need to print on it too. So I don't know what do you think, Jake? Let me ask your opinion. Do you think that, first of all, I don't know what the price point should be. Like, knowing that there is about $90 worth of stuff in there, what do you think would be a good asking price?
Ooh, knowing how long it takes you to print it as well. Obviously, I don't know everything about 3D printers, but the actual material you're using to print isn't that expensive. It's more the time of printing it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's minimal too, right? I mean, but it is, there is some time there for me to babysit the printer, specifically with these magnets, because I'm putting these magnets, embedding them in there, and so, like, I have to be around, at
certain stages of the printing.
Yeah. So I got it set up in the slicer where it pauses at a certain layer, and then I drop them in, and then the next layer they're covered up, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got to be there for that point, or it's just going to be sitting there idle for too long, and it's not good. So
yeah. So I mean, looking at it, playing consumer in my mind, which obviously I am in this situation. It's like, what would I buy it for, right? Knowing that it's about $90 worth of stuff that goes in it, and that it's specific to that stuff. So even if I went and bought it myself, it would cost me $90, or if you're buying it to put it in, it's $90. I would like to think that maybe you could partner with some of those brands of the stuff that's going in and buy it in bulk at a lower rate or something. But even then, if I buy the case from you without the stuff in it, then to me, I put in my mind a case like that's like got those magnetic components and it's thought out and it's like branded and it's cool. I don't really buy that many 3D printed things, but I'd think the case itself is maybe like $50. Like, yeah, realistically, for something from a guy in his workshop who's like building these one at a time, that sounds like, for it being plastic and what it is, probably about where you're at. So maybe, yeah, if you're within $150 range, but then you do have to consider that some people already have like a bunch of Weha tools like me, or they've got an additional driver or something. And so my worry is then you run into people who are like, well, can you make a slot in it to fit my Journey tool code driver? Or can you make one custom that fits my Weha tools? And then it's like, if you're offering a bunch of versions of them and they're like one-off orders, then it should be more, because you're figuring out the fitment of those things. And then then there's wait times and stuff. So I think the best bet is if it's like stocked, ready to go, under $150, and it's like, you get it, you've got this set. And now you, like, for people who don't already have tools, which just as many of us as there are that have tools to work on our knives. Like, I've got a couple of different drivers. Some of them are designated like fixed drivers. I've got some that are bits. I've got all kinds of stuff, right, that over the last couple of years I've accumulated. I'm sure there's also quite a few guys who the only like Torx drivers they have might have come with their knife. Like, I opened a Boker the other day that had a T8 and T6 little Allen key looking thing in it. Like, some people might just have that kind of thing. So for them, it would be rad to have like a set that's good to go, ready to rock for anything you need to do for your knives. I can't think of anybody else that's really putting it all together like a set with lube, pry tool, Loctite, drivers, bits. You can get all those things, but there's no one that like puts it all into one package and has like catered it in that way. So I think it could be interesting. Yeah, I guess my answer is probably $150 or below is what in my mind's eye would see that at.
Yeah, I mean, that's ballpark what I was thinking as well. I just didn't know what people's obviously, we're dealing with a lot of people, in knife community who don't have a problem spending money on knives, right? But sometimes people have problems spending money on other things, right? That they like, I would never spend, that much money on that. Oh, but you'll spend, $100 on a pry tool for opening beers, it's like, right.
Yeah, the number of people who sink thousands of dollars into knives before buying a proper sharpening setup
Yeah.
is like, because spending $200 on a really good sharpening setup feels like more money than buying another $500 knife that you're more excited about. So I get that.
Yeah.
It was a long time for me before I got a good sharpening setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the proof will be in how much interest there is and how many people order them. But the good thing too is if you're making them one at a time, then it's not like you have to order from somebody who's supplying them and you got a bunch sitting on your shelf. You can just make one or two a week and have one or two on hand ready. And then if you get 5 orders, then you tell people, okay, it's going to ship in a week. That's not crazy either.
I mean, that's my thought as well, right? I was just going to see first. I'm going to make a video and do talk about the box and talk about that we hit 1,000 subs and all of that, and it's going to be a giveaway, and then see what kind of interest that might generate in the comments, and then share it out on Instagram. That I'm having this giveaway, and hopefully other people will share as well and get a little bit of traction there, and then I was just going to judge. See what type of reaction and how many people asked if they could just buy one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, yeah, but that's kind of where I'm at is like, well, I can always just, when the printer's sitting there, just hit print and, pop one out, over the next couple of days and slowly stack up 10 of them, right? When the printer's being used. So.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it takes off, because even like I genuinely, not just like tooting your horn because you're here on my podcast, but I've got, like I said, pretty much I have like my tool bases covered at this point. But the idea of just having a box with all my stuff in it that makes sense, that was built for it to just grab, and like I've got this B. Weiss leather mat now that I do my work on. If I just like grab my mat and my like toolbox, that would be awesome. And instead right now I've got like 2 different drawers where I've got like drivers and like spare parts, and then like my lube is in a different place every time I need it. And like
that's the situation I was in. I was like, like this drawer over here was like, overflowing full of knife tools, right? And I'm like, I'm tired of hunting. Like, I just want this on my desk, and that's it. I just wanted to, and I also thought about latches and stuff like that. But the magnets hold it pretty well, but you definitely don't want to be turning it upside down or anything. So I was a little concerned about that, but I think that's kind of like, I think most people are just going to have it sitting somewhere, right? And
yeah, I don't imagine that being like, if I was traveling, I wouldn't bring that as like a travel maintenance kit, because that's more than I'm realistically gonna need while I'm traveling. So yeah, it would live like on my desk, and I might bring it out here to like the kitchen table area where I do some of my knife filming, and then it would go back to my desk in the bedroom. Like that's just kind of where
what I envisioned as well. Yep. So,
well, I think it's cool. I apologize to those listening who haven't been able to see it, but check it out on Wes's Instagram, or soon on his YouTube if you've just been hearing us describe this thing. But yeah, it is. I think that's a cool little doohickey invention. And I see you printing stuff all the time. Some of those projects are for other people, or are you also printing other projects for yourself beside that?
A little bit of both. I mean, some of it's just like, widgety stuff that I'm testing out. Like some of it's just for other projects. Like I'm testing tolerances or just concepts on how things would come off the printer and how I could do things. Like this magnet thing, like I had a whole stack of tests for the depth to set the magnet in, right? Because I didn't want to print the whole thing out because it takes 15 hours and then like have the magnet too deep and it wouldn't work, right? Or have it too shallow and the thing's like I can't get it off. I didn't know if that was going to happen either. So I printed out a bunch of little cylinders that had different depths that the magnets would set in. So sometimes it's stuff like that. Sometimes it's it's other stuff. Like I think I could probably share some of this stuff now. Let's see. Like these are out in the wild now, or about to be. These were designed for Rick Gish, and so this is like it's called a bearded jack. bottle opener, right? I do a lot of bottle openers for people. And so anyway, this was a design I made, and then I 3D printed and prototyped it and sent it over to him. We went back and forth a little bit, and which is nice because I can design it and print it, and then and mail it to somebody, and they can put it in their hand. And this is another one from Rick Gish. This is I think he's going to call it the Astro Pop. It's another bottle opener, nut type thing that I designed. And so anyway, always just, doing whatever people want.
Yeah. So specifically for the project that I keep alluding to, and I'm not ready to share about, you helped with the design, and then you helped us create a 3D print of it so we could see the product in a real tangible as it can be compared to the real thing that'll ultimately be made out of metal and whatever. But then we had an update. You made the update virtually, and then you were able to print the update, send us the updated print. And it's a really cool tool to have in your arsenal, an arrow to have in your quiver, if you will, to be able to make those things kind of on the fly. And I'm jealous. It makes me want to have a printer, although I don't have any of the chops to be able to design the things to print like you do. I'd just be printing blobs of plastic, and
that's still fun though too. Some people don't ever you can go to Thingiverse and just download stuff to print, and people get a lot of enjoyment out of that too. Like just print things out in different colors and widgety stuff, and I really love it. I mean, if I had my rathers, I would have a full shop, full CNC setup, and I would be doing if I could have my own job, that's what I would do is I would probably go back and do full-time, knife design and then also do design stuff for people on the side and manufacturing. Like if I could pick any job right now, that's what I would do. But unfortunately, that's just not in the cards. So
yeah,
not right now.
Yeah, I feel like there's a big cost of entry for getting a CNC from what I understand. I know quite a few people who, as they begin the process of designing a knife or whatever it is, it's oh, how awesome would it be if I could just CNC these myself? But those machines are insane in terms of how much they cost.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a small one, and just do a little bit of work and kind of help. But if you want a big hoss, you're talking, $70,000 to over $100,000. And so my big thing though is just going out on your own is a big step, as you know, right? I mean, you gotta, in this day and age, if you got kids and stuff, you gotta have health insurance. And so I'm the single source of income for my family, and I couldn't make it work, unless something magical happened one day, which you never know.
Maybe you'll start selling 1 million of those little pocket toolboxes. Then we'll be having a new conversation.
Yeah, I have I have a lot of ideas going around in my head right now, Jake, about this logo and things I could possibly do with it, and even just other boxes like this button. The button on the button on the pocket is just calling to do something, right?
Right.
This needs to be able to push in and something happen. I don't know what it is. For one, before I did just the lid part, I was looking at possibly having this where you push the button and it slid out and everything just dropped in like this, right? So that was another concept that I had initially gone for, but I thought this was way better because most times it can be sitting on the desk like that, and it's easier access. It won't tip over, things like that. But I still may use that concept for making another box that holds other type of stuff, right? Or a lid that folds back like this. I think that would be a cigarette.
The top of the pocket actually comes up.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then put stuff in it. I'm not sure what I would put in it yet. I'd want to design something around it, but we'll see.
I design a lighter, like a Zippo lighter, but instead of opening on that typical hinge, it opens like a pocket, and you shape it like a pocket. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm looking at is, I thought about doing some sort of, I may have to change the aspect ratio of this thing. But I thought about making a utility blade holder, a knife out of this, and somehow this be the mechanism that, pushes the blade out somehow. I don't know. Like the blade would come out of this part,
Yeah, it could
I
work.
don't, I don't know. Just some other thoughts about the logo in general, but it doesn't have to be. But anyway.
Well, you have my curiosity. I think just seeing the types of like little projects that you're always working on, it's always exciting to me to see what's next. Because a couple months ago when we started talking and you'd shown me some of the stuff that you were working on at that time, it's like you're already on to new things, and it's only a couple months later, which is impressive to me. And I don't know, it's like I've always loved opportunities to be creative, but I've never like actually taken the dive into like making a product and then bringing it to market and like something that I invented, like that. I envy that that you've done that, because I think I'd get such a big kick out of it, and I'd like to start taking the time to do those things and maybe make that a reality someday. But I like that in your spare time you're actually kind of like a mad scientist in there, and you've got like some cool tools that aren't like inaccessible, but not just everybody has a 3D printer. And because of your knowledge of how to design things in 3D, and like you can actually like get into your little mad scientist shop and tinker around and come out of it with something that you like thought of and made a reality. It's something that I don't think enough people experience, and I would like to.
It is very gratifying to take an idea and have it made physical. Is a very gratifying thing. And at least for me, and I know it's probably not for a lot of other people, but the people who are probably in the same personality category as us and a lot of other people in the knife community probably would get the same type of gratification on creation of things, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love making things. If I could do it all day long, I would. And I appreciate you saying that, but I've never, like, this is not successful. This is just me making stuff in my spare. I'm still waiting for that magic thing, right? That inspiration that like explodes. Like I've been waiting for it all my life, like for the idea to pop in my head, or for me to see something and be like, oh, there's the solution that I've been looking for the problem, that I have the solution for, like the invention of toilet paper or whatever. Right.
I think even if you never have that though, the fact that you've kind of crafted your life around like the pursuit of that and the like constant drive to keep creating and to have those little moments of like, even if it's not something earth shattering, that you're creating something real that you can show to people, share with people. Like a lot of people just don't get that. And so, yeah, I'd imagine if you looked back with hindsight, even if you never have that Edison moment where you create something that changes the world, right? You'll probably still be more gratified that you like took the time consistently all the time to be in that space and to let yourself like go through that process and keep at it.
Yeah, you're right. I do, like, I look back at all the stuff that like a lot of the hobbies that I've had, and most of them have been focused on making something or doing something like that, like the knife thing, right? I mean, a lot of times I get to a point where I'm dangerously close to being an expert in it, right? And then I lose. Then it's like squirrel, It's like what's the next thing? And then it's like once you get, it's almost like it's akin to completing a collection, right? Once you conquer that thing, then it's lost its luster a little bit.
And what's the next thing? Yeah,
right. So it's some of it. It's it's that old adage. It's about the journey, right? So sometimes maybe you're right. It's just about and like I have this insatiable drive just inside of me and that's just the way I'm built. Like I don't stop. I don't sit. That's not a thing for me. It's like to sit idle. I like to be able to like constantly do stuff until like my body just says, all right, that's it. It's time to sleep. So, yeah, it's a
respectable way to operate. I think there's far too much complacency in the world. So it's, I don't know, it's like too acceptable for people to not do anything. Not saying I'm the most driven, most motivated person in the world, but I definitely relate to that. Like when I look at the hobbies that I've had, whether it's been cycling or hiking or like being into knives or being into firearms or like whatever it is that I'm into, I feel like I'm rarely just like barely into it. And I also find that I don't know, I have like an internal energy. Like if I'm hiking solo, I'm hiking faster than I ever do when I'm with other people. And not necessarily just because other people are slower, but like something in me, I just have this like this push, especially when I'm in that zone personally. If I'm on a bike, if I'm on my own feet, if I'm whatever it is, like I want to beat my own time. I want to get to a higher place. I want to get further. And like there's a gratification that comes out of getting to those spots. But yeah, once I'm at the top of the mountain, then it's like I'm looking around for what's the next highest mountain, what's taller than what I'm on right now. And so yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the hobbies that I don't participate in now, it's like I feel like I kind of already conquered them. It's like I completed the collection
Yeah.
and then I sold that collection off and I went into something new. And yeah, I don't know. I have a problem with complacency in general. I think there are ways in my life. It's very hypocritical for me to say that I'm not complacent, because there are certainly aspects of my life that I become very complacent in way too easily. But the amount of people who like, I don't know, just don't look for opportunities out of things like COVID is a great example. I think when you look at the way some people have treated it, some people have like just kind of been at the mercy of it the whole time and been at whatever is going to happen is going to happen. They're going wherever the wind blows them. And like I got furloughed immediately when COVID hit. And then it was like I created a YouTube channel and now a podcast, and I had stepped up my Instagram game, and now it's like that's what I'm doing. And I don't know if that will always be the case, that I'll be able to afford like just doing this, but for right now it's workable. If I end up having to work again professionally in some like for a business at some point, so be it. But like the fact that I didn't take COVID to just sit and wait and see what was going to happen to me and like, oh, I hope work comes back, like instead I just had to play the cards I was dealt. And I probably even didn't even do the best with it like that I could have, but I was doing something, whereas a lot of people just kind of do nothing in those moments. And I think it's cool that you have a similar like sitting still doesn't work for you.
Yeah, and I mean, you've done something great. I mean, you've turned something, that could have been terrible into something great. You've pursued your passion. You're doing a great job. You've built a good subscriber base. Your Instagram game's good, and like I think you should be proud of what you did in the face of adversity. Like I completely agree. A lot of people are just sitting around watching Netflix.
Which I do a lot of, but I'm usually editing or engaging on a social platform. Like I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
I don't say any of that to toot my own horn. I don't think much of myself when it comes to like my accomplishments. I'm not an impressive person in my own eyes, but I do try. So I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I enjoy your channel. I watch it almost every day. I try to keep up with. You have the same problem as I do. Like you don't want to watch knife reviews, of stuff that you haven't touched yet. Out of fear of like influencing your thoughts or even the words. My problem is I don't want to say the same words as somebody else, right? Yeah. Subconsciously, right? Like that stuff comes in. Yeah. It comes in, and then it get unknowns to me just come out in the same. The words come out in the same way in that sentence, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're just copying what so and so said. I'm like, well, possibly.
But maybe they were right, to be fair. But
yeah. There's a lot of things that are factual. So
yeah. So maybe this is a good opportunity to switch gears a little bit to, I guess, kind of the way that our channels are different. I think both you and I, independently on our channels, like when we borrowed gear from each other, encouraged our followers or viewers, whatever you want to say, subscribers, to check each other out. And I genuinely, when I borrow gear from anybody, I always shout them out, and I mean it. I'm not like just shilling for whoever sends me gear. But there is a subject of like the importance of watching a variety of styles if you're genuinely researching a piece of gear. So where do you land on, like, what do you think the value is in not just listening to one person's advice, or like not just being influenced by one source? Do you think there's value in the fact that I'm a not specs guy and you're a very specs guy, and like how does that relate to the gear?
I mean, absolutely. Like, I think it's just like going to the doctor, like for a major surgery, you should always get a second opinion, right? I think it's the same thing, before you go buy something, how many reviews do you, like, if it's a big purchase, how many reviews do you go and read? Do you just read one person's review? Do you read all the positive reviews only, or do you go and, sort and read the negative ones too? Right. I mean, like I think it's good to see all aspects of something that you're interested in, so you can, like, I'm going to miss some stuff, you're going to miss some stuff. And hopefully, if you get enough information from multiple people, you can fill in all the blanks and make an informed decision about something. And then also, there's obviously there's, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's entertainment value in it too, right? If you just like somebody's style and you like them, like some people, I just generally like the sound of their voice on YouTube, right? Like legit.
Probably not mine.
I mean, it's just some channels like I will like I watch, YouTube in spurts throughout the day. That's what I do is like my downtime. So I'll watch somebody for, their 10-minute thing. And I'll usually watch a little bit before I go to bed. Like I'll just shut down and then go downstairs and watch it on the TV. And there's a few channels that I'll turn on and like I just listen to the sound of their voice, and then the next thing I know, I'm asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, like, but I feel relaxed, when I watch their thing. So
they're serenading you.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like I get messages sometimes about knives that I have reviewed. Like just today, I got a message, a guy on Facebook who I think knows me from the Millie Club. We had never talked before, but he bought a Bradford Guardian 3 off of kind of my recommendation, because my review of that knife was very positive. It's rare that I say like, you need to go out and buy this knife. I don't think I ever say that, but I say whether I like things or don't like things. And it was a very positive review. I genuinely, to this day, really like that knife. And he was asking me some questions about it specifically, and I hadn't carried it in a while. It's sitting in a drawer, so I had to go get it. But he was asking about the choil on mine, because for his hands, it's like not the best choil, because it just goes straight into edge. There's no nub, and then there's like sharpening choil. Like finger choil is sharpening choil, and so it just goes right to the edge. And his hands are a little bigger than mine, so for him it's kind of an issue, and for me it's not. But it's funny because in my head it was like, well, I hope he's not mad at me that I recommended this knife. And then I sent him a picture of the knife in my hand, and it just fits my hand differently. And so like, he shouldn't be. And if anybody was, I'd be defensive about that, because like, don't buy a knife just off of my recommendation alone. Like, think it through for yourself. And if I say I like it, I'm being honest. If I say I dislike it, I'm being honest. But there is a certain like filtering that people need to go through. And I think a good way to do that is to watch multiple reviews, because my hands are a certain size. My preferences are a certain like set of parameters. And so if you watch my ProTech Malibu review, and then you watch your ProTech Malibu review, literally the same knife, you borrowed mine, we say different things about the same knife. I think we both liked it. I think we both say a lot of good things about the knife, but you had different points about it than I did, which is good, because then if people compare them, they get more information. Like there's a lot of overlap, but there's more there. And so I think by watching different people, you just inherently, unless they're all just copying each other, which you and I both try hard not to do, then you are getting different different info and different opinions, and I value that. Like the way that I got into the knife hobby in the way that I am now, instead of just carrying knives like I did my whole life, it really, like the hobby and the Instagram and the YouTube and all that stemmed from me researching knives on YouTube because I was looking for what to buy. And then you discover more and there's depth that you didn't know was there before. And like, I can't just watch one YouTube channel and get all that. I need to watch a variety of opinions and personality types and hand types and all these things, use cases. Like there's a lot of value that comes in from watching all that, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important. You got it's multiple sources of information. The more data, the better, almost always, right? Unless it's just a mountain and you can't sort it. But
right.
Yeah. You said one thing there where you were afraid that he was going to hold you accountable for him not liking the knife, and that's something that I take into consideration a lot. And like I try to be somewhat objective, about the things that I'm pointing out, and say, well, I don't like it for me, but if you like those things, then it might work fine for you, right? And a lot of times I do say that I would recommend this knife, but it's under the guise of the things that I like, right? And if we have similar tastes, then I think if I like it, then you're probably gonna like it, right? But that is a bit of I'm sure a lot of reviewers deal with that, right? When somebody recommends something, they come back and go, "Oh, I bought this on your review," blah 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 blah. But you can't control what people do. Come on,
right.
Hold yourself responsible. This is your money,
Yeah,
So
I do find too, like I have a decent following now. By no means do I think I'm any kind of a big deal. I always want to reiterate that. But where I am right now, there is certainly like a kind of a group of people that I know have been around for a long time that have been watching my channel now for like 6 months plus and watch almost all of my videos, which when you watch any person that much, that's hours and hours and hours and hours of me talking and explaining my thought processes. Then I think people can get to know me a decent bit, which is a little weird when they then talk to me like they know me because I don't know them. But there's some people who I know have bought a few knives that I kind of consistently based on things that I've spoken most positively about. And I think if there's somebody who's taken the time to get to know my preferences and then they're buying based on my recommendation, then it's much safer, right? Like it's much more rare that I have someone who I know watches a ton and then like took my word on something and bought it, that they would be dissatisfied with it when they actually get it, because they know how I look at things by that point, which is another kind of advantage, I think, of having a library of content for people to look at. Because if you've reviewed a knife that they own and they watch what you say about it, then they can compare how they feel about something they know. They can have a baseline of like, oh, he doesn't like that feature, but I love that about that knife. Like that's a difference in our opinions. And then when I say like the opposite is good on another knife, you know that you don't prefer that thing, so you feel opposite of how I do. And it's kind of this like, hopefully like over time people can build that understanding of where you're coming from. And I think to me that's part of why I've wanted to like have so much content, is because I like being able to figure people out and then I can trust them more or distrust them in certain areas too.
Yeah. I mean, you just you can form a mental model of that person, right?
Mm-hmm. Which I bet, like, I feel like I know you pretty well at this point. I've watched a lot of your videos, but if I took the time for a couple of months and from the outside looking in, if I'm not me, if I'm some other guy in the hobby, and I watched 30 of your videos over a 2-month period or whatever, because you've got over 50 now, that's a good library of content, then like I'd have a pretty good pulse on who you are. Not perfect, for sure, but then like, yeah, when you say at the end of your review, like, I definitely recommend this. I like this. I think this is a good value. It works well for me. Like, these are the things I like about it. Then I would know whether or not I can kind of act on that and then spend my own money on it and call that good enough in terms of the amount of research I did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. These are interesting topics about just reviewers and YouTube in general, and the way people interact, and just I think it's that right there is intriguing to me and makes me want to, like, that's a whole nother thing on top of just doing knife reviews, right? Just like the analytics of YouTube are very intriguing to me as well, and like that's a draw for me. And so like there's multiple aspects of this thing that I like. It's not just about the reviewing, right? So I like psychology, and I like to think, and I like to think about thinking, and right. So this it's very interesting. I'm really enjoying it, and yeah, I hopefully can keep grinding away for a while and see where this thing goes.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good place. We're coming up on 3 hours. We should probably tie this up in a bow to whatever degree we can after how all over the place this has been, which my podcast will probably always be. Do you have any kind of a vision for, I know you're about to hit 1,000. You've talked about some ideas that you have in terms of you want to start kind of looking at analytics more and all that, but I feel like I have like a broad sense of where I think you're probably headed and like the projects that you're working on. But do you have a goal for like post 1K? Is there a next step that's like your next benchmark, or is there a certain thing you want to accomplish in the year, or in like, what's your timetable look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to hit 2,500 subs in the year, right?
We'll do that for sure.
In the first year, right? So that's like my next goal. Well, that was my first goal, right? I mean, I didn't know when I was going to hit 1,000 subs. It's a very interesting climb, right? I don't understand, like nobody understands the algorithm. They can kind of like they can, form a model of the way it interacts, right? But nobody knows exactly how it works. But, the way it exponentially starts climbing, obviously, they start recommending your channel more, and things happen. And then, subscriptions go up. So I didn't know when I was going to hit 1,000, but 2,500 has always been my within a year. Like if I didn't hit that, I was just going to pull the plug, right? That was, if it just wasn't going to be beneficial. So that's my first, real goal. And that's not real. That's kind of a superficial goal, but it was at least something, a mark in the sand, right? About whether it's working or not. And then, I would, there's a lot of things that I obviously like to make stuff, right? And I don't know if I want to take the channel in that direction or not. I think, my subscriber base right now is like, they do like the customization stuff, and I may do some more of that. People have been asking more for customizations. And so I think that I may kind of go off in that direction a little bit. I'm not sure about the design. Like I would love to do some more stuff just on the design and some behind the scenes stuff of like the things that I make. But that's really kind of crossing streams, right? And you're not supposed to do it on YouTube. You don't want to mix subscriber bases or like bring someone in that's interested in like 3D modeling, and then all of a sudden they start getting, knife reviews shoved in their face, right? So that's been an interesting thing there, but I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of that unless people really start requesting like behind the scenes, like they might see some of the stuff that I've made and be like, yeah, show me some of that and see where it goes. But like, I'm definitely interested in having discussion topics on industry as a whole, how things are manufactured, materials, right? And, material science behind stuff. I think that would be a very interesting series, how plastics are made, strengths, FRN versus G10, carbon fiber, like that, like the whole got a whole soapbox on carbon fiber. I like carbon fiber, but it's like, people, it's obviously way overused, and then other people think it's like the holy grail, and it's so strong and all this other stuff, and it's like, well, it is, but like, anyway, I don't want to get into it.
Carbon fiber is very strong in the direction it's meant to be strong in, and it's weak. It's weak in every other direction. But, I
mean, it's it's a very interesting thing, right? I don't want to dive too far in right now, but carbon fiber, like, you don't buy it in made up sheets, right? Like that's only for ornamental things, where it's used in the car, the automotive industry or the space industry or, aeronautical industry at all. It's all on rolls, and then, the resin's applied, and like science happens, right? Physics, like they put things in certain ways to, make things strong in certain ways, right?
And cutting a piece out of it defeats that whole mentality.
Yeah. And then they apply resin, and then it's baked into a shape, right? Yep. And that's where it's get its strength and rigidity from. And sometimes it's made to be weak and flex and other things, like in cycling. You know what I mean? Like they, like in bikes, they lay up carbon fiber in certain ways so that, chain stays will flex, right? In certain directions so that it's more comfortable, but then it's rigid in other ways so that you can transfer power, right? But never once does somebody buy a 4x8 sheet of, of carbon fiber that's completely, cured to make a bike out of. Like that doesn't happen. And so all of our usage, is all just completely ornamental in the knife industry and many other places too.
Right.
So, like the whole material science thing is very interesting to me. The way people have latched on to these materials that are hard to acquire, and some of them do look okay, but it seems like more times than not they're just putting it on there, because they're hard to get, and it drives
rarity. Yeah,
it's just a rarity thing. Like that, like me by now. Like that has no interest in me whatsoever. Like a limited edition thing, like that does nothing for me, right? And the only reason I have sprint runs is because they have different steels in them that I want to try, right? Yeah. And maybe I like the color, but the rarity that there's only 600 of them, that does nothing for me, so material sciences is probably something, I'd like to dive into a little bit more. Probably some discussions on heat treating, things like that. I don't think I'll ever do a whole lot of testing, like cut tests and stuff like that. There's some really good channels out there. And like, I would have to amass a ton of data to even compete with any of that. And like, that's a whole lot of work that I simply just don't want to have to deal with. And other people are doing a good job out of it right now. And so that's kind of where I see that, the channel may head in those few directions. Like, I want to have these specific categories of things that I do that may be interesting to the community at large, but like the whole making thing has a lot of interest to me too. And so I may end up spinning up another channel or something on that, right? And see if that does anything.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. My question was, what is your like vision or goal? And that you had a ton of answers, because to me, that just means that like, there's so much still for you to, I already like the content that you are making, but the fact that you have a lot of ideas of things you haven't even started yet, on top of like, you've obviously proven you're good at reviewing knives, and you do things already that are original. Like the fact that you Rockwell test knives that you have in for review. I don't know of another channel that's doing that, at least unless they're sending it to someone who does it and then it gets sent back to them. But like, as part of your review process, if it's your knife or someone who's going to allow you to do it, you're going to Rockwell test it. I think that's awesome. Like, those are things that set you apart. So the fact that you're already doing it different, and now you've got like multiple avenues of intrigue for you, things that you want to explore more, and not just because you think it'll do well on the channel, but because you're interested in it, means that I think it will do well on the channel. Obviously, I'm not the best judge. I don't have a million subscribers, and I'm not the expert here, but I'm interested in watching that type of stuff that you're talking about. And like, when you geek out about carbon fiber, I love it, because I come from automotive, and I even worked in aftermarket where we like dealt with carbon fiber, and I know all that stuff surface level, but like, I still like it on knives because it's lightweight, and I tell myself it's really strong.
Like it too. Yeah, I still like it.
I know it can be strong, but you're right. I have no way of knowing, like, is this on my knife scale actually stronger than G10 is? Like, probably not a lot of the time, but it's lighter. So there's
what's the breaking point? You know, what would have had to happen to break that G10? You know, that like, you know, what happened in that environment condition to make the G10 break? Like, what else would I be dead in that case too? You know what I mean? Like, it was attached to my hand. Like, what would have happened to my hand for that to have happened? Right.
Yeah.
So, like there's a diminishing returns, right? And like that's a whole other topic, like diminishing returns on value of knife, you know. And you obviously, you know, you talked a lot about it in your last podcast, and or at least you hit on it, like these categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that those are good. Those are good things to talk about, or might want to start talking about. Yeah, so I've got a lot of things that are of interest, and you know, this is like I'm never going to be, you know, million subscriber, you know, type YouTuber. Probably none of us will, because it's such a niche, right? I mean, look, I mean, who's got the most following right now? Probably Nick. And
yeah, so Nick Shabazz, I think, is at like 140K ish.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken. And then I want to say there's that guy like Cutlery Lover Jeff or something, has a ton. But
Cutlery Lover probably does have. He may have more than Nick. But that, I mean, those guys have been doing it for a while, and you know, that's a long ways away from 1 million subs.
Yeah, Nick Shabazz has 125K.
Yeah.
See, Cutlery Lover Jeff. Cutlery Lover has 580K.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like when I look at the videos that he's making currently, I don't know, I don't want to throw shade on the guy, but like most of the gear that he's reviewing, I don't find that interesting. So maybe he's reaching a broader audience because he's approaching it in a different way. I don't know. I genuinely don't want to throw shade at the guy. I don't have a problem with him, but yeah, a lot of his videos are like sharing his Christmas traditions and like a Christmas card, and like there's a lot of knives, but there's also videos like that seem kind of clickbaity, like something I hid in my tissue box for years and now it's time to get it out. Like those are different than the type of videos that I click on.
Yeah. So, you know, to kind of wrap all that up, what I was saying is like, I don't envision like my channel ever being like super uber successful. You know, I am making content and subjects that appeal to me, and that I think that other like-minded people will want to listen to and are interested in. And like, there's got to be a bunch of us out there, right? And so that's the type of content that I'm making, is for people like me and you and those other, you know, category 5 INFJ people, right? That there's got to be a ton of us out there that find this stuff a little more intriguing, and the type of, you know, the way that I go at things, right? You know, sometimes I do, like, I see my comments and people are like, yeah, man, I really like the way that you present stuff. And then other people are like, you know, do this or do that, do this different or do this different. Like,
love those.
Yeah. Like, you know, that's like, dude, this is my channel. I'm going to do it how I want. And like, if I get if there's a thing that's bothering an enormous amount of people that I do, yeah, I may try to like change that. But if you want me to like change the way I deliver content, you know, like, that's probably not going to happen, you know?
So I finally, for the first time yesterday in my comment section, I had a guy who made a comment that I get a lot in an unboxing, where he was like, I'm seriously so sick of this. All of your unboxing videos don't see the knife until at least 3 minutes in, because I always start by talking, and that's the way that I do it. And every time that someone does that, I try to comment in kind of a snarky way that's not mean personally, but illustrates that I'm not going to change because they comment that thing. And so I did. I responded to the guy and I was like, oh, thank you so much for that super valuable feedback. Let me just change the way I do everything because of your one comment. And so then the guy responded back. It's the first time this has ever happened. He was like, dude, I was in a total like grumpy mood. That was messed up. I shouldn't have done that. And it was like, somebody apologized in a YouTube comment section.
That's insane.
I responded. I was like, dude, all good. Like, you're cool. Don't worry about it.
Made my day. Yeah.
I don't take any of it personally. But it was just interesting to me to see somebody apologize because they realized like that they were kind of being the a-hole in the situation. Anyways, shout out to whoever that random guy was. But
yeah, no kidding. Like, humility is a big thing that earns my respect. That's people don't have enough of it. So
yeah, people also take a lot of things way too seriously, especially in the moment when they're like in that moment of frustration. Like a lot of things that if people took a step back, they wouldn't worry about at all. They never take the step back. And so they're always just like hyper analyzing and
always on edge. Yep.
Yeah.
Always on the edge. So
it's like, dude, it's a nice review on YouTube that you're watching for free. Calm down.
Yeah. And if you like, you still watched 3 minutes in. So, it was successful for me then.
And you commented, which also boosts my analytics. Great.
Yeah. I got you to watch it at least 3 minutes in. Yeah. So, it's interesting. Or you like I read some of the comments in your last podcast. Some of those were good too. So,
yeah. So that's one of those where like, because it was the Chris Reeves specific one, and I obviously when you put something like that out there that there's going to be some negativity. I heard from someone today that it might have actually also gotten shared in the Chris Reeve Facebook page, which I'm not in, so I can't see whether that happened or not. I'd be curious to know how that conversation is going in there, but I in general, like my whole rule of thumb is I like to engage in the comment section. And I don't have time at this point with kind of how thinly spread I am to always like respond to every comment, but I make a point to like each comment, at least like all the positive ones. And if there's something snarky, I do kind of make a sport out of like responding to it. I just make sure that I don't get personal. I don't hurl insults. I don't sink down to their level. But on the Chris Reeve one, I did find there were a couple people who were seemingly very fair and like, well, consider this, and like making points and engaging in kind of an intellectual way, not like the guy who called me a commie and said, how much is Riat paying you to shill for their knives? But there are people who, if they respond in such a way that is like genuine, like discourse, like they have a differing opinion and they can plate it in such a way, I'm happy to have those conversations. And so I went back and forth with a few people in that comment section that I thought was like, good. And they brought up things that were worth considering. And if I had a response to it, I'd respond to it. Like I welcome that kind of thing. But the YouTube comments that are just blatantly like offensive for the sake of being offensive, I love responding in a harsh way and then putting it on my Instagram stories for everyone to laugh at because it's hilarious.
I love it. I mean, it just blows my mind that people, have the gall to do that. Like that's like I don't understand. So
yeah, it is what it is. I suppose
it is.
I'm not changing it.
Yeah, no, it's like you got to have somewhat thick skin for sure to be on YouTube. So I haven't encountered a ton of negativity, but most of the stuff is I'm fairly objective though, right? I mean, it's like. Yeah, I didn't like it. You might like it, or yeah, this broke and it sucks, right? And it's like that's kind of plain and simple. So we'll see. I've gotten a few comments about my music. This has been interesting, right? So I'm going to do a poll soon. There still don't have enough people. People say, "Oh, like I don't like the music. Can you turn it off?" Or but I don't know if people do or not. Like.
It doesn't bother me one bit the way you're doing it currently. So,
yeah. So,
man. Well,
this is fun. A good discussion. We hit 3 hours, it looks like. So
we just passed the 3 hour mark. It's a real podcast now.
Yes, it's official.
Anything that the people should know about you before we wrap this up? Anywhere that they can find you other than the Pocket Perspective on YouTube and on Instagram?
No, that's the best place to find me. You know, hang out on the Millie PM2 Para 3 Facebook group quite a bit as well. But yeah, that's my main public facing things is YouTube and Instagram, and yeah, go there and check it out. And if you find it interesting, watch it. If you don't, then don't. So I may not be your style, but I try to provide good information, and if you like Jake's stuff, then you probably will like mine. I like cool stuff just like Jake does. So
same subjects for sure.
Yeah.
Wes, I think this is why you and I click so well, because you didn't just say, please like and subscribe. You said, watch it or don't. And I love that. That is a great way to end, because that's the way I feel about all the content I put out there. Like, if you want to watch it, awesome. Welcome. I love you. Thanks for watching it. That's great. If you don't, so be it. I might not want to watch it later myself. So it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So
man,
well, Wes, you can't control what people do. So
yeah, very true. Wes, it's genuinely been awesome to have you on. I know we talked about this. Yeah, we talked about this even before we did that live together on Instagram where we both unboxed. And this has kind of been, I don't want to say a long time coming. We've only known each other a couple of months, but I'm glad that we did this, and we'll definitely do it again. I consider Wes a friend. And so, Wes, you're welcome here anytime. We can absolutely do another one of these if you want to deep dive on a certain subject, or you just want to, maybe we'll do an update episode in a few months and see where we're both at. I don't know, but I like talking to you, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yes, same to you. I really, really enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next discussions.
Awesome, buddy. Well, sweet. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been episode number 5. We're putting a cap on it. I think I'm going to do 2 a week for a little bit. We're going to see how that goes. Maybe the next couple of weeks, we'll see if that's too many podcasts. I don't know. People have to spread these out over a couple of days to listen, I think, because we're over such exorbitant amounts of time. So maybe it'll be too much for people to take in. We'll find out, but this will go live this weekend. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.